The Sorcerer, The Path to Transcendence starting from Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Mermaid. Amidst the turbulent seas, a ghost ship named Queen Ona's Revenge slowly sails, the legendary vessel of the great pirate Blackbeard. A massive skeleton meticulously crafted from human bones towers from its prow. Its hollow eye sockets gaze at passing ships, emitting a chilling aura, telling of the countless bloodshed and atrocities it has witnessed. Inside, human heads hang in every corner, their expressions varying from grim to agonized. These silent ornaments shroud the ship in a suffocating atmosphere of terror. This ship is not only a symbol of Blackbeard's ambition and brutality, but also a sanctuary for his mysterious identity. Though fierce and formidable, none of the pirates aboard have ever seen Blackbeard's true face. Blackbeard, cloaked in seclusion in the captain's cabin, remains elusive, his orders relayed only through his first mate and the terrifying resurrected corpses. Though these resurrected corpses move with a stiffness, they possess a menacing presence, leaving the pirates a constant sense of unease. Though the pirates harbored doubts about their captain's true identity, Blackbeard's reputation held a firm grip on their hearts, forcing them to dodge any thought of disobedience. However, this peace didn't last long. One day, the door to the captain's cabin was violently kicked open from within. The sudden, resounding noise instantly captured the attention of everyone on board. Tram, 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 heavy footsteps echoed across the deck, and a bearded man appeared before them. His features were obscured by a thick beard, revealing only a pair of piercing, sullen eyes. His razor-like gaze swept across the pirates, and they all lowered their heads, afraid to meet his gaze, as if meeting it would instantly devour them. Blackbeard slammed the bottle in his hand, the sound of shattering glass piercing the still air. Then, he drew the trident sword from his waist, its blade gleaming coldly in the dim light. Suddenly, the ship began to move without wind, speeding away like an arrow from a bow. The pirates on board were thrown into disarray by the sudden acceleration. "Stand up, you bastards!" Blackbeard's voice was like a roar from hell. "From now on, no pause, Captain. Where's our destination?" one pirate bravely asked. However, the response he received was a fierce whip from the Revenant, the whip like the tentacle of death, lashing him mercilessly. "Keep heading east, and do not stop without my order." Blackbeard's voice echoed across the deck, his mood at its lowest. The Revenant sent to protect his daughter had brought back bad news. Jack Sparrow and his daughter had been captured by a mysterious wizard. Blackbeard knew that if he wanted to find the Fountain of Youth, he would need Jack Sparrow. Fortunately, he had a trick up his sleeve. Blackbeard produced a stuffed puppet in the image of Angelica, which he had meticulously crafted using sorcery. The puppet faced east, in the direction of Angelica. "The Fountain of Youth is mine," the dire prophecy became Blackbeard's death warrant. He was determined, no matter the cost, to find the fountain, extend his life, and break the cursed prophecy. Meanwhile, the British Navy, led by Hector Barbossa, and the fleet sent by the Spanish royal family were marching towards Whitecap Bay. Weiss was the first to arrive. The sun was high in the sky, radiating a blazing light. "Mermaids hunt at night or in foggy weather," Jack Sparrow said. He hadn't stopped since yesterday. "Let's dock." After docking, Jack Sparrow decided to relax. It was still early, anyway. With the help of the potion, he felt no fatigue from the night's exertions. "Are all pirates as unrestrained as you? Who knows if I'll still be alive tomorrow? Enjoy life while I can." Jack Sparrow was not ashamed, but proud, a carefree smile on his face. Darkness quickly fell. Jack Sparrow emerged from the cabin, refreshed, Angelica quietly following behind him. "So, how do you plan to capture those mermaids?" Wes stood on the deck, silently lowering a small boat into the sea. Then, he produced 4 scarecrows and muttered something. They were initially shrunken and unremarkable, but under his whispered spell, they gradually expanded, eventually transforming into 4 lifelike pirates. Wes jumped aboard, and the scarecrow-like pirates surrounded him in the center of the boat. Their oars slowly moved, and the boat glided silently across the sea. Wes's kerosene lamp shone softly, illuminating the area for dozens of meters. Angelica, who remained on the boat, now urged Jack Sparrow to flee. "Jack, let's take this opportunity to escape. What about the witchcraft we have?" Jack Sparrow's voice was hesitant, his gaze shifting between Angelica and the distant sea. "I'll ask my father to help remove the witchcraft," Angelica said eagerly. "Blackbeard," Jack Sparrow scoffed. "Come on, I'd rather trust this wizard." Just as Angelica was about to continue persuading him, a seductive song suddenly rose from the sea. The melody was like gentle waves, lapping against the shore of the soul. The song held an endless tenderness, as if it could soothe all pain and fatigue. "Here I come," Wes whispered. Even Angelica couldn't help but be drawn in by the mermaid's song. A mermaid lay at the stern of the boat. Her delicate, elven face and eyes that seemed to speak would have captivated most men. But this time, it was just a wink to a blind man, a wasted effort. A scarecrow suddenly struck, swiftly and accurately strangling the mermaid's neck, then quickly reverting to its original scarecrow form. The mermaid immediately dropped her disguise, baring her sharp teeth and roaring menacingly. The mermaid's screams carried a message, and the mermaids began frantically ramming the boat. Some threw seaweed ropes, tangled them around the scarecrow's neck, and dragged him into the sea. However, when the mermaids realized it was the scarecrow they were dragging into the water, they sensed something was wrong, but it was too late. Wes tapped the sea surface with his wand, and frost spread rapidly. 5 mermaids, unable to escape, were frozen to the surface. They desperately pounded the ice, trying to break it free, but to no avail. The other mermaids wanted to rescue them, but fearing a trap, they watched from afar. "Lucky. 5 of them have taken the bait," Wes said calmly as he walked across the ice. The mermaids, looking pitiful, whispered pleadingly. Wes remained unmoved, for he knew beneath their beautiful facade lay a dangerous threat. They were man-eating creatures. Wes took out a bottle and tapped it gently with his wand. The bottle emitted a powerful suction force, sucking the 5 mermaids into the bottle. The 5 shrunken mermaids desperately knocked against the glass wall. They were shouting, but the sound insulation effect of the bottle was so good that no sound could be heard. Weiss put the bottle back into his pocket with satisfaction. "Thank you, brothers. I hope those who have monthly tickets can support us with money, and those who have recommendation tickets can support us with love. Thank you." Chapter 52 The Holy Grail Flies. Wes apparated, and with a barely perceptible surge of magic, he returned to the deck. In that instant, the air seemed to distort slightly at his arrival, his figure looming before Jack Sparrow like a ghost. This sudden sight startled Jack Sparrow so much that he ripped out strands of his beard in panic. "Let's go," Wes commanded expressionlessly. "As you command, Master Wizard." Jack Sparrow obediently ran to the helm. His movements were slightly flustered, clearly still recovering from the shock. He quickly walked to the helm, his hands firmly gripping the wheel. "It's a good thing I didn't take your advice and run away." He could actually teleport, Jack Sparrow said to Angelica with lingering fear. "I didn't expect that either." Angelica's voice trembled slightly, filled with fear. She clutched Jack Sparrow's arm tightly, seeking some comfort. "I know you mean well, sweetheart, but please follow my instructions from now on, okay?" Jack Sparrow soothed her gently grasping Angelica's hand. The ship quickly left Whitecap Bay and headed for the mysterious island where the legendary Fountain of Youth lay. Waves crashed against the hull, creating a roaring sound that marked the beginning of their adventure. A few hours later, the Queen Ona's revenge also arrived at Whitecap Bay. Blackbeard stood at the bow, surveying his surroundings with a sharp gaze. His weathered face, contemplative as he gazed at the still melting ice and the shattered boat, drew on his weathered face. Drawing on years of seafaring experience, Blackbeard quickly made his assessment based on the remaining traces. "They've been here before, and they've captured the mermaids," his voice deep and powerful, an undeniable truth. Just then, a group of mermaids appeared from the sea. Their beauty and mystery captivated, yet their eyes were filled with anger and hatred. They rushed towards the Queen Ona's revenge, intending to capsize it and avenge their captives. However, they chose the wrong target for revenge. The pirates on the ship quickly grabbed their muskets and pointed their cannons at them, ready to fire if the mermaids approached. But Blackbeard didn't want to waste time. A hint of impatience flashed in his eyes, and he swung his sword of Tridon. Boom! With a loud bang, the flamethrower on the bow spewed out flames. The flames were like a ferocious beast, instantly covering the sea in front. The mermaid who was in the front couldn't dodge in time and was engulfed by the flames, letting out a terrifying scream. The screams echoed on the sea, as if they could penetrate people's souls. Even those pirates who were usually cruel and ruthless couldn't help but show a look of pity when they heard the screams. "Speed up, you bastards," Blackbeard commanded, his voice resonating like thunder across the ship. "What are you doing standing here? Don't waste my time." By now, the pirates aboard were exhausted. They had sailed for an entire day without a single rest. One pirate stepped forward, his face etched with fatigue. "Captain Teach, we haven't rested since we put out to sea." "Oh," Blackbeard said coldly, looking around. "So you want a break?" "Yes, we're exhausted," the pirates echoed. "We're not your slaves." More and more pirates demanded a break from Blackbeard. "Ha, ha, ha, ha." Blackbeard laughed, his laughter tinged with sarcasm. "You want a break?" "Of course not," the pirates high-fived, believing their request had been granted. However, Blackbeard's expression darkened, and his right hand caressed the hilt of his sword. Suddenly, the ship's ropes, as if alive, wrapped around the necks of the first few pirates who spoke, hoisting them up. The pirates struggled briefly before dying and being thrown into the sea. The surrounding mermaids swarmed over them, dismembering them, staining the sea red with blood. "Who wants to rest now?" Blackbeard's voice rang out again, his brutality making the pirates afraid to resist. They paddled hard, fearing they would be the next to be hanged. The Queen Ona's revenge also left Whitecap Bay, leaving the mermaids unwillingly lagging behind. Blackbeard ordered the pirates to drop several barrels of ignited explosives, which killed several more of the pursuing mermaids. The remaining mermaids could only watch in anger as they departed. Gently lapping the waves, the British naval fleet slowly passed through the area, finding nothing unusual on the surface. Rather than launching an impulsive attack as before, the mermaids chose to quietly dive into the depths, avoiding any potential conflict. Meanwhile, Weiss and the other two had arrived at a mysterious island. The island was lush with vegetation, with lush trees and dense grass completely covering the roads built by previous generations. Jack Sparrow led the way, brandishing his knife and slicing through the vines blocking his path. "Mr. Wizard, why don't you use your magical powers so we can find Wampan Stiletto's Holy Grail faster?" Jack Sparrow complained, slapping a mosquito sucking his blood to death. Angelica was drenched in sweat, her hair sticking to her face. The jungle was hot and humid, filled with venomous creatures. A single careless move could cost one's life. Wes wore a robe, yet he didn't break a sweat. Even stranger, the island's snakes, insects, rats, and ants all swarmed around him, refusing to approach. This was all thanks to the robe. Made from the skin of a basilisk, it carried the creature's aura, preventing these ordinary creatures from approaching him. The robe also possessed extremely high magical defenses. After Wes's refinement, it had become a powerful alchemical tool. The three were indeed moving too slowly. On this tropical rainforest island, even ordinary people struggled with every step. "I'll lead the way." Wes and Jack Sparrow swapped places, with Wes walking in front. It was unknown what kind of magic Wes had used, but as he approached, the trees and flowers in front of him all made way for him, a path wide enough for one person to pass through. Jack Sparrow sheathed his knife, unsurprised by the miraculous sight. "I wish this had happened earlier." The three of them advanced unimpeded to a cliff, where a long broken suspension bridge lay before them. This didn't stop Wes. He softly chanted a levitation spell, and the three of them floated in midair. Jack Sparrow, having learned his lesson, wasn't flustered. Instead, he thoroughly enjoyed the sensation of soaring. Angelica, on the other hand, screamed in panic, her shrill cry scaring off a flock of birds. The three of them reached the other side safely. Angelica, holding onto a tree, managed to catch her breath. After passing a small path, they saw a ship. "That's the Santiago." Jack Sparrow pointed at the ship perched on a rock pillar. "It's said that it contains all the treasure Wampan Stiletto acquired through his adventures." Wes had no interest in treasure. Getting money was easy for him now. "Come, Holy Grail." Wes cast the summoning spell. From within the ship, a clattering sound could be heard. Whoosh, whoosh, two Holy Grails crashed through the cabin and flew into Wes's hands. Chapter 53 Fountain of Youth. The craftsmanship of the two Holy Grails was truly exquisite. Wes took them in his hands and examined them carefully. The intricate carvings on the cups resembled exquisite paintings, each line reflecting the artist's meticulous craftsmanship. Their surfaces shone with a soft luster, as dazzling as the twinkling stars in the night sky and as warming as the first rays of sunlight at dawn. They had likely been used on many important occasions, witnessing countless moments of glory. Perhaps they had accompanied Wampan Stiletto on many adventurous journeys and weathered countless trials and tribulations. Jack Sparrow, curious about the Holy Grails, leaned forward to examine them. "You want them?" Wes asked. Jack Sparrow shook his head slightly. Although he was deeply curious about the Holy Grail, he knew it was not something he could possess. Seeing that Jack had no greed, Wes stopped teasing him. Now that he had obtained the two key items, the mermaid and the Holy Grail, Wes began to silently plan his next move. Jack Sparrow led the way as the three slowly entered a cave. However, upon entering the cave, they found nothing but a variety of stalactites and a small pool of water. Jack Sparrow carefully examined his compass and began to wonder if there was something wrong with it. After all, they had tracked the trail all the way here hoping to find more clues. "The compass is fine. This is the location of the Fountain of Youth," Wes said slowly, gazing at the inscription on the Holy Grail. He recited the words, his voice echoing through the cave. As his last words fell, the water within the cave began to float upward, defying gravity. As if drawn by an invisible force, the small pool of water slowly rose, finally gathering into a suspended pool above the three men's heads, where it hovered silently, never settling. "Captain Sparrow, you have fulfilled your promise." With a wave of his hand, Wes detached two orbs of light from Jack Sparrow and Angelica's bodies and swiftly returned to Wes's hands. Jack Sparrow and Angelica felt a sudden sense of relief. With their restraints removed, they were finally free. Freed, Angelica reached out and grabbed Jack Sparrow's hand, ready to leave with him. She had no desire to continue this dangerous adventure. However, Jack Sparrow was unwilling to leave. His thoughts were now focused on his black pearl. He knew that only with Wes's help could he recapture his beloved ship. "Where's my reward, Mr. Wizard?" Jack Sparrow gently withdrew his hand, turned around, and asked Wes expectantly. "Don't worry, Captain Sparrow," Wes replied calmly and confidently as he put away the Holy Grail. "The fun is yet to come. Could it be that Blackbird is heading this way too?" Wes didn't answer directly, instead leaping into the floating pool. Jack Sparrow hesitated for a moment, but quickly decided to follow Wes in, completely ignoring his girlfriend Angelica's dissuasion. Angelica could only sigh helplessly. Not wanting to be alone, she followed Jack Sparrow into the suspended pool. When they both opened their eyes again, they found themselves in a misty place. It didn't seem spacious, barely enough for 100 people. Far from the magnificent spectacle they'd imagined, there was practically nothing here save for a few towering rock pillars. The legendary Fountain of Youth looked like ordinary, clear water, flowing quietly and without a ripple. Wes pulled out the small bottle containing the mermaid and tapped it gently. As if enchanted, the bottle began to grow until it was the size of a small swimming pool. The 5 mermaids within also returned to their original size. They huddled together, staring at Wes in fear. Clearly, they were frightened by his magical power. Elodie, Jack Sparrow was surprised, recognizing one of the mermaids immediately. "Jack, help us." Seeing Jack, Elodie felt like she had found a ray of hope. His arrival gave her hope. "Jack," Angelica looked at Jack Sparrow in disbelief. "You've actually picked up a fish. What's in your head, baby? Let me explain." Jack Sparrow hurriedly tried to explain. "Old woman, I'm not a fish," Elodie retorted angrily. "Who are you calling an old woman?" Angelica grew even more enraged. Ladies," Jack Sparrow tried to appease his two difficult friends, but no one paid him any attention. They continued to bicker, not giving him a chance to interrupt. In desperation, Jack Sparrow fired into the air. Bang! The gunshot echoed in the small space. Startled Angelica, she quickly drew her sword and looked around cautiously. Elodie hid in the water, not daring to emerge. Angelica realized it was Jack Sparrow's doing and pointed her sword at his chest. Jack Sparrow pushed away the blade pointed at him and turned to Wes, bowing. "Wizard Master, can you?" "No," Wes replied coldly, his eyes devoid of sympathy. "Look how beautiful they are." "They're just poor girls," Jack Sparrow said, and the 5 mermaids followed suit, acting pitiful, trying to draw Wes's sympathy. "Pitiable? Captain Sparrow, you're out of your mind. These mermaids are not ordinary people." Wes wasn't fooled by their beauty. "They're just half human, half beast creatures. Humans are on their menu." Seeing the plea in vain, the 5 mermaids abandoned their disguises, baring their sharp teeth. Jack Sparrow wanted to speak up for his old lover, but Angelica stopped him, whispering, "Don't anger him. He needs the mermaid's tears. At least for now, we're safe." Then, Wes cast a spell called the Nightmare Curse, a form of illusion that causes a creature to fall into its deepest fear. Under the spell, the mermaids fell into a nightmare, their own fear bringing them to tears. Weiss collected these tears in a small, transparent bottle. As he finished, a flurry of footsteps could be heard. A swarm of pirates appeared from nowhere and quickly surrounded them. It was Blackbeard and his men. Blackbeard gazed greedily at the fountain behind Weiss, his eyes gleaming with lust. He drew his rifle, pointed it at Weiss, and commanded, "Get out of the way. The fountain is mine. Don't you even understand the principle of first come, first served?" Weiss refused to back down, facing the pointed gun. Bang! Blackbeard pulled the trigger without another word. The close-range gunshot was ear-piercing. Chapter 54 Fountain of Youth 2. But how could the bullet possibly hit Wes? It hovered in the air at an unusually slow speed, as if blocked by a transparent bulletproof vest, losing its penetrating power. Then, like a deflated ball, the bullet fell to the ground. The pirates stared in horror, one of them unable to resist shouting, "Wizard, he's a wizard too!" The pirates panicked at the word wizard, their bodies involuntarily falling back, instinctively dodging. Seeing this, Blackbeard was enraged. He lashed out with his sword, slashing down a fleeing pirate and roaring at the others, "Anyone who dares to run will suffer the same fate as him. Attack me!" Horrified by Blackbeard's brutality, the pirates raised their muskets and fired at Wes. But their bullets, like pebbles dropped into water, had no effect. Not only did the bullets fail to hit Wes, but they also stopped 3 meters away from Wes, and fell to the ground with the same effect as the first shot fired by Blackbeard. Blackbeard ordered the pirates to reload their bullets and continue shooting. When the pirates hurriedly fired bullets at Wes again, the situation seemed a little out of control. Under Wes's control, the bullets that were suspended in the air shot back at the pirates at an extremely fast speed. The pirates standing in the front row fell like wheat that had been cut down, blood was all over the ground, and only painful groans could be heard. The remaining pirates were panicked and pale. Without hesitation, they dropped their weapons and turned to flee. However, the next second, they ran back in horror. It turned out that Hector Barbossa had arrived with the British Navy. His eyes were red, like burning flames, staring at Blackbeard. "Finally found you, Blackbeard." Barbossa waved his hand and shouted, "Attack! Kill Blackbeard!" The British Navy, armed and ready, leaped into action, engaging the pirates in a fierce battle. The arrogant Blackbeard showed no regard for his former foe, not even glancing at Hector Barber. His gaze remained fixed on Weiss. Blackbeard ordered 4 powerful revenants to surround Weiss with their weapons. Blackbeard himself drew his sword and cautiously maintained a safe distance from Weiss, his eyes warily observing him for any unusual movements. Blackbeard's men were not so lucky. They had already been terrified by Weiss's magic, and now their fighting power was like a pile of scattered sand. They were quickly overwhelmed by the British Navy. "We can split the Fountain of Youth equally," Blackbeard compromised, attempting to enlist Weiss in his fight against the British Navy. "I still like the way you look just now," Weiss taunted, before attacking. Under his transfiguration spell, a rock pillar instantly transformed into a massive python. Its immense size was terrifying. With a fierce swipe of its tail, it whipped a revenant into the air, sending it slamming heavily to the ground. This strike stopped the other 3 revenants in their tracks, and they eyed the giant python warily. However, these revenants knew no fear, felt no pain. Having been tempered by Blackbeard, their skin and flesh were thick and tough, seemingly indestructible. Though blocked by the python, they continued to fight tirelessly. "Try this again," Weiss shouted, launching a god of swords attack at Blackbeard. Blackbeard quickly raised his trident sword, narrowly blocking Weiss's attack. Weiss raised an eyebrow, thinking that the sword was indeed extraordinary. "Drop your weapon." Weiss cast a spell, and the trident sword was struck by the spell, instantly flying out of his hand and landing not far away. Avada Kedavra, Blackbeard saw a flash of green light approaching. Although he reacted quickly, grabbing a nearby pirate and shielding him, they were both sent flying, tumbling heavily to the ground. Blackbeard suffered only minor scratches, while the pirate, used as a human shield, collapsed, lifeless. Avada Kedavra, years of fighting had sharpened Blackbeard's sixth sense, and he quickly rolled to avoid the blow. However, Weiss instantly unleashed 2 deadly spells. Blackbeard dodged only one, yet he managed to survive. It was the first time Weiss had seen a normal person survive a fatal curse. Blackbeard seized Weiss's hesitation to pick up the sword of Tridon and quickly closed the distance between them. Almost instantly, a pirate who had served Blackbeard for many years collapsed to the ground, bewildered by the British naval officer fighting him, who thought he had suddenly mastered some kind of telekinetic technique, some kind of death replacement sorcery. Death replacement sorcery is not without flaws. Blackbeard continued to advance on Wes. Slowing spell, Wes cast a non-harming spell. As expected, Blackbeard's movements immediately slowed, as if he were moving in slow motion. It seems your sorcery can only deflect damage, not the effects of other spells, Wes said. Blackbeard was swinging his sword at Wes, but his movements were too slow. Slow motion made Blackbeard's movements look comical. Wes then cast a petrification spell on Blackbeard. Petrification. Blackbeard stood there motionless, like a statue, his sword-wielding hand frozen in midair. Wes lifted Blackbeard's coat with his wand. As expected, 5 voodoo dolls hung from Blackbeard's waist, one of which had lost its head. So they're voodoo scapegoats. Wes gently touched one of the dolls with his wand, and it began to burn. Suddenly, a pirate's body caught fire. No matter how he struggled, the flames could not be extinguished, and he was eventually reduced to charred charcoal. Hector Barbossa noticed something was going on. Blackbeard used those dolls to distract himself from the damage he was suffering. Are you fools still going to work for him? Impossible. He's our captain. Some pirates refuse to believe it. How could it be? He never treated us like human beings. Most pirates remained more sane. Run, run. The pirates now wanted to get as far away from him as possible. Unfortunately, they had no escape, as the Spanish Navy had also arrived. Without a word, they opened fire on everyone they saw, forcing the pirates to retreat towards the British Navy. Just as the British Navy was about to shoot the fleeing pirates, Hector Barbossa stopped them. Fools, the Spanish are the biggest threat now. Target those Spanish, Hector Barbossa shouted. The British Navy finally realized the change in the situation. Both the British and the pirates had suffered casualties in the previous battle, and the Spanish were now appearing to reap the benefits. So, the pirates and the British, who had just been fighting for their lives, joined forces to fight the Spanish. However, the Spanish had been conserving their strength for so long, and their numbers were so great that they soon overwhelmed the British and pirates. Some of the Spanish began to rope around the surrounding rock pillars, apparently intending to destroy the Fountain of Youth. Weiss, who was extracting Blackbeard's memories, saw the Spanish trying to destroy the Fountain of Youth and immediately stopped what he was doing. That won't do. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. The experiment about to begin. Weiss immediately released Blackbeard in turn to stop the Spaniards in their tracks. He cast another transfiguration spell, summoning the massive anaconda. The serpent, upon its appearance, began a frenzied assault on the Spanish, its every twist shaking the earth. Its massive body thrashed violently among the Spaniards, knocking those who couldn't dodge to the ground. Then, the serpent opened its bloody maw and let out a deep roar. The Spanish troops were thrown into chaos by the snake's attack. They had never seen such a massive creature before, and were momentarily bewildered. Scatter. Don't let it capture multiple targets at once. Amidst the chaos, an experienced Spanish captain shouted, his voice resounding loudly amid the clamor. He quickly assessed the situation, realizing that if the troops continued to cluster together, they would become perfect targets for the snake. Shoot, the captain gave his second command. He drew his musket from his waist, aimed at the snake, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot rang out, and the bullet whistled towards the giant serpent. Hearing the captain's command, the other soldiers began to recover, raising their weapons and launching a fierce attack on the giant snake. The crackle of musketry rang out incessantly. To the Spanish's surprise, their bullets, apart from a few sparks, mostly bounced off the snake's thick skin. A few penetrated its scales, causing little damage. Enraged by the barrage of attacks, the snake opened its maw, let out a deafening roar, and then leaped forward, engulfing a dozen soldiers within its grasp. The British and pirates seized this opportunity to strike back. In the chaos, they sought advantageous positions, using muskets and swords to attack the Spanish trapped by the snake, forcing the Spanish back. In this chaotic situation, how could the Spanish focus on the Fountain of Youth? Weiss returned his attention to Blackbeard. His memory extraction spell had been interrupted, forcing him to start over. Weiss pressed his wand against Blackbeard's temple, infiltrating his mind and searching for memories related to witchcraft. Blackbeard's mind was filled with fragments, and Weiss patiently filtered through them until he found what he needed, the memory of witchcraft. This was undoubtedly an excruciating experience for Blackbeard. It felt like someone was stabbing his brain with an awl, stirring it continuously. Blackbeard opened his mouth, trying to wail in agony, but no sound came out, only saliva dripping from the corners of his mouth. The once majestic pirate had now lost all dignity. Father, Angelica's heart was broken at the sight of her father being tortured. She tried to rescue Blackbeard from Weiss's clutches, but Jack Sparrow grabbed her. "Jack, let me go. I need to save my father." No matter how Angelica struggled, she could not break free. Tears streamed down her face as she begged Jack Sparrow to let go. Faced with his beloved girlfriend, Jack Sparrow steeled his resolve and grasped her tightly, knowing that interrupting Wes from rescuing Blackbeard would be a recipe for death. Wes extracted a shimmering thread from Blackbeard's temple, a memory of his witchcraft. He placed it in a small vial to be used for future research. Blackbeard's memory, brutally extracted, collapsed to the ground, a shell devoid of his soul. Wes cared little for Blackbeard's life or death. He saw the fountain of youth as his own, and the remaining people were merely obstacles. He began chanting a spell, and everyone present, save Angelica and Jack Sparrow, felt as if countless ants were crawling on their bodies. The sensation grew in intensity, becoming unbearable. They began scratching relentlessly, scratching until their skin broke and blood flowed, but the agonizing itch remained unquenchable. Some even rubbed their skin against the hard rock, leaving bloody marks on their bodies, but to no avail. Wes's spell lasted a full 5 minutes before pausing. The itching sensation disappeared from everyone's body the moment it stopped. They gasped for air, their faces etched with pain, looking utterly devastated. "Get out of here," Wes's cold voice rang out, chilling them to the bone. Without a moment's hesitation, everyone grabbed their weapons and began running back, fearing they would be mercilessly slaughtered by Wes if they were too slow. "Carry all the bodies away," Wes commanded. The men didn't dare resist, obediently carrying the bodies and fleeing in panic. To Wes's surprise, more people remained. Jack Sparrow, Edward Teach, Hector Barbassa, Angelica, and Gibbs remained. And of course, there was Blackbeard, lying on the ground, nearly dead. Jack Sparrow shrugged, his face resigned. "Mr. Wizard, I haven't received my promised reward yet," Gibbs yelled behind Jack, avoiding Wes's sight, fearing he might notice him. Angelica, tears streaming down her face, looked at Blackbeard lying on the ground and could only plead with Wes once again. "Please spare my father. I'll do anything for you to spare him, he's of no use to me anymore." Wes handed the sword of Tridon to Jack Sparrow. "Your black pearl is in Blackbeard's collection room." Jack took the sword and gently stroked it. With it, he could control the Queen on his revenge, meaning he now possessed 2 legendary pirate ships. Wes looked at Hector Barbassa again. Hector raised his hands warily, offering Wes a fawning smile. "Jack and I are old friends, and I want to go with him." Anything else, everyone present realized Wes was trying to get rid of them and wisely prepared to leave. Jack Sparrow even tried to ask Wes to release his old lover, Elodie, before leaving, but was stopped by his henchman, Gibbs. "Don't anger the wizard. He needs the mermaids' tears, not their lives." Just as the group was returning to the cave through the pool, Hector Barbassa suddenly struck, piercing Blackbeard's heart with a sword. As he drew back the sword, blood spurted from Blackbeard's chest, a scene that stunned everyone. As for what happened between them afterwards, Weiss had no desire to know. To prevent further interruptions, Weiss set traps at the entrance and exit of the pool, ensuring that anyone who entered again would be given a warm welcome. Once safe, Weiss retrieved a table, chairs, and a microscope-like magic tool from his suitcase, setting the place up like a laboratory. He retrieved the mermaid tears he had collected and examined them carefully. The dark, humid environment and the imprisoned mermaids made the scene resemble some evil wizard practicing some unspeakable sorcery. The secret of the Fountain of Youth was a sacrifice. Only through sacrifice could one's life be transferred to another. The mermaid's tears, the Holy Grail, and the water from the Fountain of Youth are all essential to complete this mysterious sacrificial ritual. The ritual transforms one person's soul and body into pure life force, which is then transferred to another. But how exactly does this work? Can it purify the vengeful spirits within the Philosopher's Stone? These are questions Weiss needs further research. Another challenge now looms. The island's location has been exposed. The fleeing British and Spanish will soon gather more troops and return. After some thought, Weiss decided to conceal the location of the Fountain of Youth. He used magic to raise a thick fog around the island. The poor visibility and the hidden reefs in the sea would make the island a graveyard for ships. Even if the British and Spanish found the island, they would be unable to land easily. Even if they were lucky enough to reach the cave, Weiss had planted a vast expanse of dangerous magical plants, such as devil snares and piranhas, surrounding it, fertilizing anyone who approached. Weiss then used the confusion charm, the concealment charm, and the muggle-repelling charm to completely hide the cave. After finishing everything, he returned to the Fountain of Youth with peace of mind to continue the next experiment. I would like to ask the big guys to reward the monthly tickets in their hands and check the data. The overall score has dropped a bit. Your support will definitely give me more motivation to update. Chapter 56 Sacrifice Ceremony. Weiss's research wasn't going smoothly. The Fountain of Youth ritual, seemingly simple on the surface, was tinged with an eerie aura. Was the water there naturally formed, or was it created by some mysterious spirit? Weiss hesitated to attempt anything without a thorough understanding. After all, he wasn't sacrificing a human life, but he certainly hadn't figured out how to transform the Philosopher's Stone into pure energy through the Fountain of Youth ritual. He shifted his attention from the fountain to the Holy Grail. Upon closer inspection, Weiss noticed a strange pattern engraved on the inside of the chalice, suspecting it might be a magic circle. However, Weiss had never seen such a magic circle before. Perhaps there's a book about it in the Hogwarts library, Weiss thought, feeling a rare sense of frustration at his limited knowledge of magic. After packing up, Weiss rushed back to Hogwarts and headed for the library. The library was dimly lit, and the air was filled with a musty smell of ancient books. He arrived at the library's restricted section, where a terrifying collection of dark magic books lay. The shelves were covered in thick dust, and some of the books seemed sentient. Upon sensing Wes's presence, they began to tempt him to take them away. Their allure had no effect on Wes, who remained unmoved, intently searching for the book he needed. Soon, in a secluded corner, he stumbled upon a volume titled Sacrifice, Forbidden Method. The cover was torn, the edges yellowed, and it looked as if it had been untouched for a long time. "That's it," Wes exclaimed, overjoyed, and borrowed it. Returning to his office, Wes eagerly sat down at his desk and gently flipped open the book's title page. Scripted on the title page were startling words, "Are you sure you want to open this book?" He was stunned. This title page is truly unique. This only piqued his curiosity. Is the first page so interesting? Weiss thought. There must be a reason why this book was relegated to the restricted section. Curious, he continued to flip through the remaining pages, perusing them carefully. Boringly, aside from the title page, the rest of the book was remarkably formal and serious, with no other interesting sentences like the first. As he read, Weiss learned that the author was Albad Jeremias, a wizard with a deep interest in ancient times. He meticulously documented his journey into the study of long-forgotten magical rituals and sacrificial offerings. He collected data from around the world and ultimately came to a startling conclusion: the existence of spirits. The evidence was in the form of various sacrificial rituals and the magical circles associated with them. In ancient times, people offered sacrifices to spirits, seeking their protection. Records of this phenomenon can be found throughout the world. Initially, Albad Jeremias himself didn't believe in the existence of spirits, but by chance, he restored an ancient magic circle and arranged the offerings according to the ritual. He followed the ritual step by step, and at first, nothing seemed unusual. Until the final step, he suddenly heard a mysterious voice, as if from another world. Then, he saw the god with his own eyes. However, the price of seeing the god was the loss of his sight, and no matter how he tried, his eyesight remained unhealed. Jeremias recorded his research and experiences in detail, titled Sacrifice, the Forbidden Method, at the end of the book. He solemnly warned, do not attempt any sacrificial ritual. Not only will it bring you unforeseen consequences, it may even cost you your life. Weiss slowly closed the book, his heart swirling with emotion. Was what Albad Jeremias had seen a real god? Or was it just a dream, or something else entirely? Who knew if these sacrificial magic circles were a hidden trick? Unless Weiss had a flash of inspiration, unless he could invent his own sacrificial magic circles. Weiss reopened the book and carefully studied every word. Yes, it totally works. Weiss slammed his hands on the table excitedly. The core elements of a sacrifice include a believer, the one offering the sacrifice, the offering, the ritual, and the recipient of the offering, the deity. Weiss pondered carefully, and it seemed he had it all. Believer, the house elf Jandy undoubtedly treated Weiss as a deity. Offering, the Philosopher's Stone was a rare treasure. Deity, Weiss hadn't reached that level yet, but the panel granted him limitless possibilities. All he needed was a dedicated ritual. That's not a problem. I can design my own ritual. Weiss was incredibly excited, eagerly spreading out his paper and beginning his work. He combined the magic circles from the Holy Grail book and attempted to construct a completely new, uniquely his own. This was no simple task, as it involved the true name. The true name held special significance for higher-ranking beings like gods and demons. Once an ordinary person knew a demon's true name, they could be exorcised. Wes Erwin was a name, a code name, but not his real name. This puzzled Wes. What kind of real name should he choose? Could he live up to it? Most importantly, would it be accepted by the world? This was crucial to Wes. He racked his brains, his head nearly exploding, but still couldn't decide on a real name. After all, it wasn't something to be taken lightly. However, Wes knew he wasn't someone whose life was coming to an end. He still had plenty of time to think and decide. Furthermore, designing the sacrificial ritual would take considerable time. It wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. A few days after Wes returned to Hogwarts, he was summoned to Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore handed him a copy of the latest Daily Prophet. Wes took the paper and his eyes fell on the striking headline on the front page: Sirius Black, the most brutal criminal in history, has successfully escaped from Azkaban. Next to this headline was a line reading, Ministry of Magic, gross negligence, Cornelius Fudge resigns. The newspaper also included a photo of Sirius. In the photo, Sirius was thin and shrunken, his black hair matted and greasy, like a tangled mass of seaweed. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes dull, his cheekbones prominent, and he looked like a walking corpse. Weiss knew that Sirius was a master of transfiguration, an illegal animagus who could transform into a large black dog. With this ability, he evaded the Dementors and became the first prisoner in history to escape from Azkaban. Sirius's escape caused panic, and people questioned the Ministry's ability to protect everyone. Fudge was furious. Dumbledore said slowly, "Professor, I don't think this has anything to do with me." Weiss didn't want to get involved in these things. He felt he didn't need to get involved. He stood up and was about to leave. His main concern at the moment was designing his own sacrificial ritual. The author is still working, and your support is my motivation to keep updating every day. Please give me a monthly ticket, thank you. Chapter 57 Interlude on the Train. The Ministry of Magic plans to allow Dementors to enter Hogwarts. Dumbledore saw Weiss about to turn around and leave, and hurriedly spoke to try to stop him. Dementors, considered magical creatures of the utmost evil, feed on human happiness, memories, and souls. They are evil spirits from the abyss, devouring the finest in the human heart. Employed by the Ministry of Magic, they are stationed in Azkaban to guard the condemned souls. Anyone who sets foot in that gloomy and terrifying ground of Azkaban will be mercilessly tortured by these monsters. Under the Dementors' influence, people gradually lose all joy and happy memories, their hearts shrouded in darkness, and they fall into an abyss of endless despair. Sirius's successful escape has further inflamed these creatures' wrath. To the Dementors, Sirius's escape is not only an affront to their dignity, but also a challenge to their duty. The Ministry's attitude is also difficult to describe. Faced with these enraged Dementors, the Ministry compromised, which is truly incredible. They agreed to allow the Dementors to leave Azkaban and hunt Sirius. This level of compromise raises questions about the wisdom of the Ministry's decision. Dumbledore unloaded a barrage of information. Weiss, who had already reached the door, paused upon hearing this and sank back into the soft armchair. Where has all the sense in those officials gone? The Ministry is truly useless. Dumbledore leaned back in his chair, the wrinkles carved by time deepening. He rubbed his brow, trying to ease the fatigue of having spoken so much in a single breath. After all, with his age, speaking too much was becoming a strain. They suspect Sirius is targeting Harry, and there's a good chance he'll try to sneak into the school. Many parents are worried about their children's safety because of this. Weiss's face was expressionless. He raised one hand and tapped the armrest of the chair with his fingertips. So they came up with this brilliant idea? What about the Aurors? Did they all disappear? Dumbledore sighed slightly. God knows what Fudge is thinking. However, I have firmly rejected the Dementors' request to enter Hogwarts. Fudge is furious, and his attitude towards me has become increasingly fearful. Having said that, Dumbledore sat up and straightened his back, as if everything was under his control. In the end, Dumbledore told Weiss that he had reached a compromise with the Ministry of Magic. While Dementors cannot enter the Hogwarts grounds, they can patrol the surrounding areas, including Hogsmeade and the Hogwarts Express. Dumbledore nodded. I'm worried the Dementors might be tempted to attack the students on the train. Weiss pondered for a moment. I understand, Weiss agreed. As a Hogwarts professor, he had an obligation to protect the students. Weiss had taken time out during the previous school year to learn the Patronus charm. If a Dementor dared to attack a student, he would show no mercy. On the first day of school, under a blazing sun, Weiss arrived at Hogsmeade. However, unlike the usual bustling scene, the Dementors' arrival had made it much quieter. The usually bustling streets were now deserted and silent. Many shops were closed, their closed signs swaying gently in the breeze, as if expressing the owner's anxiety. Pedestrians were few and far between, each one in a hurry, unwilling to stay even a moment longer. They wrapped themselves tightly in their clothes. Their heads lowered as they hurried past, fearing the sight of the terrifying Dementors. Even the occasional conversations were kept in hushed tones, and they hurried off. The September sun still blazed down, but the Dementors circling over Hogsmeade caused the temperature to plummet, as if autumn had arrived prematurely. The chill wasn't just physical, it was a deep-seated dread. Dementors roamed every corner of Hogsmeade, carefully searching for anyone or anything that might attract their attention. These monsters knew no mercy and acted brutally and directly. They approached passers-by without warning, their icy presence and terrifying presence forcing fear into their faces. For some reason, the monsters didn't seem to pay any particular attention to Weiss, allowing him to reach the train station safely. The sky gradually darkened, and the already gloomy sky seemed to be covered by an even thicker veil. Weiss was acutely aware of the Dementors' increasing activity, especially as the Hogwarts Express approached the station. The atmosphere reached its peak. The train, packed with students, was filled with laughter and joy, echoing with the children's innocence and anticipation for the upcoming term. However, this train proved a delicious feast for the Dementors. As expected, as the train approached the station, dozens of Dementors pounced on it like a pack of hungry wolves. The train was forced to a halt by the sudden onslaught, and the clamor within the train abruptly ceased, replaced by the children's terrified screams. It seemed that a staff member wanted to disembark and negotiate with the Dementors, but was blocked in the cab by several Dementors. Weiss, observing this, immediately performed apparition. His sudden appearance startled the driver and the staff. Seeing the frightened driver, Weiss approached and gently patted his shoulder, attempting to soothe his nerves. "Don't worry, I'm a Hogwarts professor. Leave the rest to me." The driver was immediately relieved upon hearing Wes was a Hogwarts professor. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and nodded repeatedly. "Great. I don't want to deal with these monsters anymore." Wes's expression turned sour towards the Dementors. He turned around and shouted at them. "Get out!" Wes's sudden appearance set off a piercing roar from the Dementors in the cab, a sound 100 times more unpleasant than the sound of ice blades scraping against glass. Those who heard the roars covered their heads and ears, faces etched with pain. Seeing the Dementors remained unmoved, Wes decided to teach them a lesson. He extended his index finger, and a silvery white light shone from it, emitting a bright glow. The Dementors began to tremble under the light, their already terrifying figures shrinking in the glow. The other Dementors gathered around Wes, a tense standoff ensuing. Just then, a man in ragged clothes and a haggard face squeezed through the crowd. Seeing Weiss facing off against dozens of Dementors, he drew his wand and pointed it at them, then greeted Weiss. "Hello, I'm Remus John Lupin, this semester's Defense Against the Dark Arts professor." What's going on? Despite his somewhat shabby appearance, his presence was no less impressive. Weiss nodded slightly and replied, "Hello, Professor Lupin. I stopped these filthy idiots from entering the train to search it." Hearing Weiss' words, the Dementors became even more agitated, emitting bursts of shrill roars and appearing ready to attack at any moment. "Thank you all for your recommendations and monthly votes. I'm currently working on an update, and I just posted it now, just in time for some downtime. Still asking for monthly votes." Chapter 58 The New Werewolf Professor. Weiss and the new Professor Lupin quickly united their forces, waiting for the Dementors to strike. After all, as Hogwarts professors, they couldn't strike first. As the two sides clashed, several Aurors approached. Their expressions were serious, their uniforms immaculate, their wands neatly tucked at their waists. These Aurors' duty was to monitor the Dementors and ensure they didn't abuse their power while carrying out their duties. Whenever Dementors clashed with other personnel, the Aurors intervened to maintain order and balance. The Aurors weren't surprised to hear the two Hogwarts professors desperately trying to prevent the Dementors from entering the train to search it. They were all Hogwarts graduates and held deep affection for their alma mater. While they internally disapproved of the Dementors' search of the train, they couldn't express their opposition openly due to their superiors' orders and their responsibilities. Now, seeing the two Hogwarts professors step forward to stop the Dementors, they naturally sided with the school. However, the Dementors were determined to search the train. Despite the Aurors' constant pleas, the Dementors ignored them, threatening to force their way onto the train. Weiss, unwilling to engage these monsters, released streams of thick, silvery mist from his wand. The mist swirled and shifted, constantly changing shape. As everyone watched in astonishment, the mist gradually coalesced into a majestic eagle. The eagle spread its wings, and a high-pitched cry pierced the sky, carrying with it immense majesty and power. The eagle charged directly at the Dementors. Sensing the power of their patroness, the Dementors scattered, quickly disappearing from sight. "All right, it's settled," Weiss retracted his wand, calmly reassuring the crew and the onlookers. The Aurors exchanged glances at Weiss's actions, none wanting to offend the professor over the Dementors. They exchanged glances, then reached a tacit decision: let the train pass. "Professor Lupin, I'll leave the rest to you," Weiss instructed, then apparated away in a flash. The students erupted in excitement after Weiss's departure. They excitedly discussed the magic Weiss had used to repel the evil Dementors. That magical moment was etched in their minds, becoming the first legendary story of the new semester. After ensuring the Dementors wouldn't dare return, Weiss returned to Hogwarts. He walked through the familiar corridors and into the Great Hall, where he found his seat and quietly waited for the opening ceremony to begin. Dumbledore, noticing Weiss's return, immediately approached and whispered, "Well done. I'll handle the Ministry of Magic." "Don't worry," Weiss raised his chin slightly, appearing nonchalant. "I never worry about the Ministry of Magic." The opening ceremony was about to begin, and he adjusted his clothes again, making sure he looked presentable. "Headmaster, you should be tougher, or the Ministry will push your luck." Dumbledore sighed softly and said, "Fudge is too timid. If I use force, he'll think I'm trying to usurp his position and might do something irrational." Weiss snorted, "What a foolish, selfish politician." Weiss never looked down upon the moral integrity of these politicians. In his view, politicians often disregard the greater good for their own benefit. After the two exchanged a few words, students began to enter the auditorium. The auditorium suddenly became bustling with the chatter of students. The students discussed what had happened on the train that day, occasionally glancing at Weiss in the professor's chair. The professors had also arrived. They looked at the students with either serious or kind expressions, quietly waiting for the ceremony to begin, with the occasional professor whispering something. With everyone present, the annual opening ceremony officially began. Headmaster Dumbledore stood solemnly at the podium. He specifically warned students to be careful not to act in a way that might cause misunderstanding, as Dementors would patrol the school grounds. Dementors know no excuses. They are cold, ruthless creatures of darkness, acting solely on their instincts and the missions assigned by the Ministry of Magic, but Professor Irving fought off those monsters today. He summoned a beautiful eagle. "What kind of magic was that?" Fred, seated in his chair, though somewhat frightened by Dumbledore's description of the Dementors, bravely expressed his opinion. Students began to discuss, and the entire hall erupted in chaos. The professors exchanged glances, applauding Weiss's actions. Weiss, the person involved, was the most composed. He sat quietly, facing the approving glances from students and professors alike, his face devoid of any smugness. He only occasionally glanced up at Dumbledore, waiting for the opening ceremony to continue. "Quiet," Dumbledore magically amplified his voice, drowning out all the other voices. The students were forced to cover their ears, and the hall fell silent. Dumbledore glanced around the room and continued, "The Patronus charm is a profound art, difficult even for adult wizards to master." He explained in detail the importance and difficulty of the Patronus charm, concluding with a warning to the students to be careful of Dementors. After the opening ceremony, Dumbledore summoned Weiss and Lupin to the headmaster's office. Lupin seemed a little nervous, squinting at Weiss, knowing full well why Dumbledore had summoned him. "Headmaster, I don't think this is a good idea," Lupin fidgeted, rubbing his dry-looking hands. "Lupin, Weiss is trustworthy," Dumbledore soothed. "And you don't want Severus involved, do you?" At the mention of Snape's name, Lupin lowered his head in shame. "We certainly went too far back then, and I don't expect him to forgive us." By this point, Weiss had already guessed Dumbledore's intentions. "Wes, I'd like you to help me brew the Wolfsbane potion." "I know you're an excellent potionist," Dumbledore asked. Wolfsbane potion helps werewolves maintain their composure during the full moon, inhibiting their transformation and preventing them from losing their minds and attacking others. The new defense against the dark arts professor is a werewolf, and the Wolfsbane potion is crucial to him. "Yes," Wes agreed this time, his calm response surprising both Lupin and Dumbledore. Lupin had always faced discrimination due to his werewolf identity. In the wizarding world, werewolves are often viewed as evil and dangerous. Despite Lupin's efforts to control his werewolf nature, prejudice persisted. He had excelled in school and thought his talent and hard work would allow him to find a suitable job after graduation and begin a new chapter in his life. However, reality proved harsh. He encountered numerous obstacles and could not find a job, forcing him to live a life of wandering. Previously, with the support of his close friends Sirius and James Potter, he had managed to make a good living. However, ever since Sirius was deemed a traitor and the Potters tragically perished, Lupin's world collapsed. He fell into deep pain and confusion, devastated by the betrayal and loss of his best friend, a trauma he struggled to recover from. He wandered alone in the darkness for a long time, until this year, when he braved the danger to become the defense against the dark arts professor, determined only to protect Harry. Harry was his best friend's child, and he couldn't let him repeat the Potter's mistakes. He vowed to himself, "Sirius, I'm going to stop you this time." Chapter 59 Substitute Teacher. At the start of the new semester, students were surprised to find that the new defense against the dark arts professor, Professor Lupin, was surprisingly reliable. Whenever Professor Lupin entered the classroom, he was greeted with a warm welcome. In class, Professor Lupin always explained complex defense against the dark arts knowledge in a simple and accessible manner, making it easy for students to grasp. Whether he was explaining difficult theoretical knowledge or guiding students through practical exercises, he always did an exceptional job. Many students exclaimed that since Professor Lupin took over, they felt that defense against the dark arts was not only important but also interesting. Students generally considered Professor Lupin to be the most capable defense against the dark arts professor in recent years. With the exception of Slytherin, students from the other three houses were very fond of the new professor. During his time teaching, Professor Lupin's quality of life had changed dramatically, and his appearance had improved significantly. In the past, he had often faced hunger and loneliness, but at Hogwarts, he finally no longer had to endure the intermittent hunger. The school not only provided adequate food, but also the love of the students and the care of his colleagues, all of which revitalized his spirits. On this day, coinciding with a full moon, Lupin received a bottle of Wolfsbane potion from Weiss and hurriedly disappeared. Before leaving, he asked Weiss to cover for him in the class. Weiss wanted to refuse, but Lupin was walking so fast that he couldn't catch up. "You could actually ask Dean Snape, I think he'd be happy to cover for you," Weiss called in the direction Lupin was leaving. Unfortunately, Lupin had already vanished. Reluctantly, Weiss made his way to the defense against the dark arts classroom, which happened to be for the third-year students. The students, seeing Weiss, thought he had walked into the wrong room. "Professor Erwin, this isn't the classroom for runes," a blonde girl politely reminded him. Weiss smiled faintly and explained, "Oh, I know. Professor Lupin's not feeling well, so he asked me to cover for one class." "What's wrong, Professor Lupin?" Ever since Professor Lupin arrived, he'd been taking special care of Harry. Not only did he provide extra help in class, but he'd also privately taught him many practical defensive techniques, which had left Harry feeling particularly grateful. "Don't worry, it's just a minor issue." Weiss glanced at the noisy classroom, where students were still whispering, and raised his voice. "Quiet, students, please. Can anyone tell me what you learned last class?" Hermione immediately raised her hand. Professor Lupin's last class was about how to deal with red hats. Weiss flipped through the textbook, then closed it and decided to let his imagination run wild. "So, ladies and gentlemen, what creature are you most worried about encountering in the wild?" Ron blurted out eagerly. "Eaters of souls. My mom says they're the most evil creatures, sucking away a person's soul." "Werewolves," Hermione said confidently, A werewolf's bite transforms you into a new werewolf. Vampires, I think it's mummies. The students' answers varied widely. Wes looked at the imaginative children and smiled. You're alright. The students were a little disappointed, feeling that Wes was just trying to give them a once-over. However, in my experience, the most dangerous would probably be wizards. A hush fell in the classroom as these words were uttered, and the students expressed their confusion over Wes's answer. Wes then explained, because you never know if the wizard you encounter will be a dark wizard. The mention of dark wizards made the atmosphere tense, and some students even flinched. When they were little, their parents would scare them with rumors of the evils of dark wizards when they misbehaved. The students' reactions made Weiss realize he might have been exaggerating. He quickly soothed them. Don't worry, kids. You're at Hogwarts now. It's one of the safest places in the world. You won't encounter any dark wizards, but there are Dementors outside the school, a Ravenclaw girl complained, frowning. I can't go to Hogsmeade this semester. I've been looking forward to it for so long. Yeah, and my mom won't sign my permission to stay in school, another student muttered. Me too. More students joined in the complaints, and the classroom was filled with disappointed voices. The topic had unknowingly veered off topic, and the students' attention was now focused on the Dementors. At this moment, a student mustered up the courage to ask, Professor, can you teach us the spell that repels Dementors? Yes, another student added excitedly. That's a really cool trick. Weiss smiled and patiently explained, that's a very difficult spell. Many adult wizards haven't mastered it yet. It's too difficult for you. Hearing this, the students all drooped in frustration. To divert their attention, Weiss decided to change the lesson plan. This class, we'll have a practical exercise, he said. With a flick of his wand, the tables and chairs in the classroom automatically moved, creating a large open space in the middle. Form teams of 2 and quickly find your partners. Such an interesting event immediately captured the students' attention, and they quickly sprang into action, quickly finding their partners. The disarming charm, have you all learned it? Weiss asked. Yes, the students answered in unison. Who has experience casting this spell? Weiss looked around, but no students raised their hand. No one. The students lowered their heads in shame, not daring to meet Weiss's gaze. This isn't your fault. The professors who taught this course 2 years ago? At this point, Wes didn't know how to judge the 2 professors. It doesn't matter. Wes clapped his hands. I need an assistant right now. Who's willing? The children raised their hands, with Draco raising the highest and fastest. You're the one, Mr. Malfoy? Draco stood proudly like a victorious general. Are you ready? Wes asked solemnly, wand raised. I am. Disarm your weapon. Wes, taking advantage of Draco's inattention, immediately cast a disarming charm, sending Draco's wand flying. Draco was caught off guard and could only pout in frustration, his eyes filled with resentment. That's the first point I want to teach you. Strike first, and you're stronger, Wes said slowly. When encountering an unidentified wizard, regardless of whether they have malicious intent or not, the first thing you need to do is disable them. The disarming charm is a very useful spell. Most wizards can't perform magic without their wands. Draco silently retrieved his wand. Now you attack me, Weiss looked at Draco and said. Draco was holding back his anger, and in anger he successfully cast a disarming charm at Weiss. But was easily dodged by Weiss. Secondly, your opponent is not made of wood, Weiss said earnestly. They will dodge and counterattack. You must always be vigilant in battle and cannot treat your opponent as an immobile target. It is excellent that Mr. Malfoy successfully cast the disarming charm. 5 points to Slytherin. The students of Serpent House high-fived to celebrate. Only Draco was unhappy. He felt that his performance was terrible and he was simply a clown. Entering the second round of recommendations, it is inseparable from your support and votes. Thank you. Chapter 60 Tom and Jerry. This was Harry's class's first pair-based combat practice, and everyone was eager to showcase their magical abilities and experience the thrill of combat. However, only a few, like Harry, Hermione, and Draco, were able to successfully perform the disarming charm. The others struggled mightily. Some students accidentally miscast the spell, turning their companions' hair red. Others, overly nervous, lost control of their magic, nearly causing minor accidents. Overall, the class was filled with surprises and joy, and the students gained valuable experience amidst laughter. This engaging practical class quickly concluded. Weiss instructed the third-year students to practice the disarming charm so they could surprise Professor Lupin in the next class. Although the students were still eager to learn, Weiss vanished as soon as get out of class ended. Besides the third years, the fifth years also had a defense against the dark arts class today. Weiss, not wanting to disrupt Professor Lupin's teaching schedule, arranged for the fifth years to practice the combat practice as well. Compared to the third year students, the performance of the fifth year students surprised Weiss considerably. Many students demonstrated exceptional mastery of spells, and the performance showed the rigor of their diligent training. The most outstanding of these was Cedric Diggory, the head boy of Badger House. Wes noticed that Cedric was incredibly popular, not only among Badger students but also among his peers from other houses. In this particular class, Cedric volunteered to serve as a teaching assistant, helping Wes organize sparring sessions. Wes was deeply impressed by him. Tall and handsome, with sharp features, black hair, and bright gray eyes, Cedric stood out from the crowd. Many girls admired him, and he was fair and humble, treating every student who came to him for advice equally, never holding back because they were from other houses. Not only was he handsome and academically excellent, but he also excelled in sports, making him the perfect protagonist for a novel. If Wes hadn't known that Harry was the protagonist of the story, he would have almost made Cedric the protagonist. However, the handsome boy's ending in the original book was indeed too tragic. Cedric, Wes said approvingly, "You would be a professor in the future." Cedric responded modestly, "I'm far from that, Professor, I'm telling the truth." Wes patted Cedric on the shoulder. "Think about it carefully." With that, Wes left the classroom. Cedric watched Wes's retreating figure, lost in thought. The next day, Professor Lupin returned to normal, though his face was not looking good. However, he still insisted on teaching the students. Wes was relieved to see this. He had originally planned to ask Professor Snape to help cover the class, but Dumbledore rejected the proposal. "The students really enjoy your battles class, and you haven't disrupted Lupin's teaching schedule. You're working well together. Severus has potions and the Slytherin headmaster's duties, so he simply can't spare the time." Hearing Dumbledore's words, Weiss felt comfortable filling in for the class and agreed. As time went on, the students grew accustomed to Professor Lupin's monthly illness. They also thoroughly enjoyed Professor Weiss's battles class. Defense against the dark arts quickly became one of the most popular classes. After class that day, Weiss was about to return to his office to attend to some unfinished teaching tasks when a sudden, loud noise erupted from the other end of the corridor. Meow meow meow. A series of sharp, continuous meows shattered the quiet. A large ginger cat darted swiftly through the crowd, its movements agile and lightning fast. Its eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if it were chasing something extremely important. "Scabbers, run!" Ron cried anxiously, trying to stop the giant cat, but he was always clumsy and in his panic, he fell flat on his face. Ron was almost crying with anxiety. "You stupid cat, Scabbers, run!" Wes heard the noise and hurried over to help the fallen Ron to his feet. "What's going on?" Wes asked with a frown, thinking that a student had been attacked by a Dementor. "Professor, please save Scabbers." Ron grabbed Wes's sleeve anxiously, his voice tinged with tears. "Who, my pet mouse, Scabbers, is about to be eaten by that stupid cat," Ron said, looking worriedly in the direction of the giant cat's pursuit. "Crookshanks is not a stupid cat, he's very smart." Just then, Hermione rushed over, panting, her cheeks slightly flushed from running, and her words were full of defense for Crookshanks. "It's all your stupid cat's fault. Can't you keep an eye on it?" Ron glared at Hermione. "Crookshanks is a cat. Catching mice is its nature," Hermione retorted without hesitation. The two of them engaged in a quarrel in the corridor, neither willing to back down. "So, what's going on?" Wes looked at the arguing pair helplessly, then turned to Harry, who had also been left alone. "Here's what happened." Harry adjusted his glasses, which had tilted from running, and began to recount what had happened. It turned out that Crookshanks was Hermione's pet, but for some reason, he had developed a fascination with Ron's pet mouse, Scabbers, and spent his days obsessed with catching him. Crookshanks, on the other hand, showed little regard for other mice, causing a major conflict between Ron and Hermione. The two pets began to fight fiercely, and Hermione and Ron argued daily over the issue. Harry was caught between his two friends, feeling torn. Wes finally understood what was going on. He knew in his heart that the mouse Scabbers was not an ordinary mouse at all, but a person, Peter Pettigrew, the traitor who truly betrayed the Potters. Crookshanks must have received a request from Sirius to capture Scabbers. There was a bit more sympathy in Wes's eyes when he looked at Ron. If Ron knew that his beloved pet was a short, thin, middle-aged man with sparse and greasy hair, and that he put him to bed every day, he wondered if he would vomit up all the overnight meals. Ron, you are a true warrior, you will definitely be able to face the bleak life. Wes sighed silently in his heart. He knew that this matter would have to be solved sooner or later. Ron could not be kept in the dark, nor could Peter Pettigrew continue to pretend. But now was not the time to reveal the truth, he had to wait for the right time. Wes decided to appease Ron and Hermione first, so that they would stop arguing, and then find a way to deal with this thorny problem. Chapter 61 Get the Map. Hey, everyone, this isn't the place for a quarrel, Weiss warned loudly, his face serious. More and more students, drawn to the commotion, gathered in the corridor, curiously watching. When Draco and several of his Slytherin companions appeared, Harry felt a surge of urgency. He didn't want Hermione and Ron to become the targets of Draco's ridicule, so he quickly pulled them out. Though Hermione and Ron were still arguing and simmering with anger, they also didn't want to embarrass Draco and give him something to talk about. So, reluctantly, they followed Harry out of the corridor. Seeing there was nothing more to see, the students gradually dispersed. Weiss watched them go, muttering to himself, I have to find a good opportunity to reveal Pettigrew's identity. Weiss sat at his desk, turning the parchment over and over, examining it carefully. It looked ordinary, but Weiss could sense the magical power within it. The twins gazed at Wes with smug pride, figuring that if even Wes couldn't decipher the map's secret, they could show off to the professor. Professor, what do you think? I'm afraid even you can't decipher the secrets of this map, Fred challenged Wes with a confident smile. We put a lot of effort into activating it, George echoed. Wes, expressionless, spread the parchment flat on the table. He extended his index finger and gently touched it, his fingertips seemingly sensing subtle magical fluctuations in the air. Then, he whispered the incantation, reveal. As he spoke, the previously blank parchment began to glow faintly, and tiny characters gradually emerged. The characters seemed unwilling to yield, looming across the surface, as if fighting Wes. Wes felt a strong magical resistance, and he focused his mind, gathering an even greater force. The words on the parchment became increasingly clear, revealing a detailed map. The map was covered in dense, tiny footprints, each labeled with a corresponding person's name. Weiss carefully examined the remarkable map, quickly locating his office and seeing his own and the twins' names, which updated in real time as he moved. The map accurately displayed the location of everyone within Hogwarts, including the castle's rooms, corridors, staircases, classrooms, and halls, as well as secret passages and hidden rooms unknown to many. Turning to the back of the map, Weiss discovered signatures in various handwritings: Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, 4 bizarre nicknames. The twins' eyes widened. They had never expected Weiss to be able to decipher the map so easily. They had assumed that even the most knowledgeable professors would struggle to decipher its secrets. The map is very cleverly designed, Weiss explained to the twins, continuing to study it. However, the creator was quite weak at the time. With enough magical power, such a magical item could be easily deciphered. Hey, see, George, I knew Professor Erwin could do it, Fred said admiringly. It's incredible. These 4 seniors are truly amazing. They've created such a magnificent item. They're truly role models for us. George's gaze was fixed on the parchment, and you could practically see stars twinkling in his eyes. The mischievous twins idolized the Marauders, Remus Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, Sirius Black, and James Potter. They hoped one day to create astonishing magical items as these 4 seniors. Professor, your alchemy notebooks have given us a lot of inspiration. Fred's words were filled with a thirst for knowledge, expressing his deepest dream. We also want to create a magical item of this caliber, as miraculous as this Marauder's map, but no matter how many methods we try, even staying up all night researching, we always fail. George slumped his shoulders, his brow furrowed, a hint of resignation in his voice. Every failure reminded them of the gap between them and their idol. The 4 predecessors had created the Marauder's map from scratch, while the twins couldn't even imitate the original, which was a huge blow to them. But it wasn't because the twins were less talented than the Marauders. After all, the Potter and Black families both had centuries of history. James and Sirius had been exposed to alchemy since childhood and had received guidance from their family elders, while the twins had often had to rely on their own continuous exploration. Weiss understood their feelings and gently comforted the twins before explaining the magical knowledge used in the Marauder's map. He explained the magical principles and techniques behind the map in easy-to-understand language, which benefited the twins greatly. Time slipped by unnoticed, and as bedtime neared, the twins were reluctant to leave. "You don't want to get caught by Filch, do you? We'll continue tomorrow. By the way, could you lend me this map for a few days?" "No problem, Professor. We already know the secret passages and hidden rooms on the map by heart," the twins readily agreed. After the twins left, the office fell silent again. Weiss stared at the name Peter Pettigrew marked next to Ron on the map, as if a thought occurred to him. The next morning, the tranquility of Harry and Ron's dormitory was shattered by a sudden commotion. The scene was so chaotic it could only be described as a scene of utter chaos. Ron's eyes widened, his face flushed crimson, and he was seething with rage. "When the hell did that stupid cat get in here?" he yelled, his voice echoing through the tiny dorm as he frantically tried to shoo Crookshanks out with a pillow. The large ginger cat dodged Ron's every blow with remarkable agility. Scabbers, his tiny body trembling, darted around the room, his tiny paws clacking rapidly on the floor as he dove for Crookshanks' grasp. Finally, at the most critical moment, Scabbers seized a tiny opportunity and darted through the crack in the door like a flash of lightning. Crookshanks, not hesitating, chased after him, disappearing down the hallway. "Why does that ugly cat keep pestering Scabbers? Hermione must have done it." Ron angrily rose from his bed, his hair disheveled and his pajamas askew. His eyes burned with rage, as if he was about to confront Hermione. Harry looked at Ron and could only throw up his hands in frustration. When will this ever end? Although Crookshanks was usually very intelligent, with a keen sense of movement and excellent hunting instincts, he was still somewhat outmatched by a cunning opponent like Peter Pettigrew. Pettigrew's cunning had repeatedly escaped Crookshanks's pursuit. This time, Pettigrew had managed to escape. Crookshanks stood there, sniffing the air carefully, his nose twitching slightly, trying to find any trace of Pettigrew. However, there was no trace of Pettigrew. He meowed unwillingly a few times, then, with a helpless flick of his tail, fled the scene. However, besides Pettigrew, there were others who were equally cunning. Weiss cast a disillusionment charm and quietly followed Crookshanks, his figure becoming elusive under his magic. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Finding Bigfoot. Crookshanks first took a leisurely circuit of the school, moving with graceful, agile steps, lightly weaving through its corners. His ginger figure occasionally flashed down the corridor, then paused briefly in the gardens, as if searching intently for some important target. This time, he didn't return to Hermione as usual, but instead walked straight out the Hogwarts gates. Sure enough, Weiss thought to himself, knowing that this time, following Crookshanks would yield results. Once outside the school grounds, Crookshanks' pace increased noticeably. He paused frequently, sniffing the air carefully, picking up even the slightest scent. He glanced around warily, maintaining a high level of alertness. Soon, Crookshanks arrived in front of a dilapidated house. He stood there quietly, his tail wagging gently, and barked twice towards the interior. Woof! Woof! Two loud barks quickly responded from within. Then, a large, pitch-black dog emerged from the dilapidated building. Despite its massive size, it was incredibly bony, its ribs clearly visible, a sign of immense suffering. Its fur was matted and tangled, lacking its former luster. Meow meow woof woof. The cat and dog seemed to be engaging in some kind of communication. The black dog's eyes held an almost human-like sense of loss, its head lowered, looking deeply dejected. Crookshanks gently nudged the black dog's head, as if offering comfort. At this moment, Weiss lifted the disillusionment charm and appeared before the cat and dog. They froze in surprise, then their fur instantly stood up like sharp thorns. They growled at Weiss, their hostility evident at the uninvited visitor. "Nice to meet you, Padfoot, or rather, Sirius." The big black dog was startled. He hadn't heard that name in a long time, and this familiar yet unfamiliar name stirred a complex wave of emotions within him. But it instinctively chose self-defense, baring its sharp teeth and poised to pounce on Weiss. "I know Peter Pettigrew is still alive, and I also know you've been wrongly accused." Weiss's words resonated like thunder in Sirius's heart. Sirius's mind went blank, and for a moment, he was unable to react. Disbelief filled the dog's face. Woof woof, it barked anxiously at Weiss, as if explaining something important. I don't understand dog language. You can change back to human form first, Weiss shrugged, looking helpless. The large black dog curled up into a ball, and then its body began to transform, gradually transforming into a tall, adult man. He was wearing tattered clothes, the original color and style long gone. Greasy, dirty hair and a scraggly beard almost obscured his face, making him look even more homeless than a tramp, with only a pair of deep gray eyes visible. Who are you? What do you know? Sirius spoke incoherently, perhaps because he had not communicated with others for a long time, or perhaps because he was too weak. Before we discuss this, I think you need to replenish some nutrition first, Weiss said, gently waving his wand, and a picnic tablecloth appeared on the ground. Then, bread, milk, fruit, steak and other foods appeared on the tablecloth in turn, exuding an enticing aroma. Sirius' throat swallowed saliva involuntarily. Since escaping from prison, he either searched for food in the trash can or hunted small animals such as mice to barely fill his stomach. He had not tasted such a rich meal for a long time. However, he remained highly alert to Weiss. He didn't know why this stranger helped him. Don't worry, you don't have to use poison to deal with a wizard without a wand, and if I really wanted to catch you, I would have notified the Ministry of Magic long ago, and the Dementors would have come. Upon hearing the word Dementors, Sirius' body shuddered involuntarily. However, what Wes said did make sense. From the contact between Sirius and Wes, he did not feel any malicious intent from the other party. So, he picked up a piece of bread and stuffed it into his mouth. In less than 3 seconds, the bread was swallowed by him. After that, he could not wait to grab a piece of steak and stuffed it into his mouth. Before he even swallowed it, he stuffed another piece of bread into his mouth. As a result, he choked and rolled his eyes. He quickly picked up a can of milk and drank it hard, but the milk spilled all over his body. After finally swallowing the food in his mouth, he began to stuff food into his mouth again, making a mess on the tablecloth. As he ate, Sirius suddenly burst into tears and snot flowing down his face. These foods made him feel the warmth he had not felt for a long time, and the pain and grievance in his heart also surged. Wes did not disturb him, but just stood quietly by and let him vent his emotions. Crookshanks leaped into Sirius's arms, meowing softly. Sirius placed a meat pie into Crookshanks's mouth. Thank you for your hard work. I don't know what I would do without you. This tough guy, who hadn't shed a tear even after being wrongfully imprisoned and tortured by Dementors in Azkaban for years, now burst into tears. His tears contained so many emotions: pain, grievance, gratitude, and a lingering hope. Wiping away his tears, Sirius looked at Weiss. How did you know Crookshanks was helping me? Weiss handed Sirius the Marauder's map. Sirius gently stroked the parchment, the familiar touch bringing back memories. The Marauder's map you created fell into the hands of the Weasley twins, who happened to be. Weiss unspooled his premeditated excuse. Crookshanks's intentions were so obvious, and he showed such disdain for the other mice, that I suspected he was being orchestrated. I just didn't expect it to be you. Weiss's reason actually had many loopholes, but Sirius's brain was a little slow at that time and he didn't notice it. So that's how it is. I didn't expect that the props I used for the prank would help me again. Sirius looked at the Marauder's map and fell into memories. What are your plans next? Weiss interrupted his thoughts. Of course, we will catch the traitor Pettigrew. Sirius' eyes became fierce. I will make him confess everything he has done. How do we catch him? Crookshanks did a great job and almost caught the mouse, Sirius said confidently. As long as we give it a little more time, we will definitely catch Pettigrew. Crookshanks raised his head proudly when he heard Sirius's approval of him. Just because I said your animagus form is a dog, it doesn't mean your brain has become a dog's brain. Weiss looked at Sirius speechlessly. What do you mean? Weiss's words made Sirius a little confused. Obviously, he didn't understand what Weiss meant. Chapter 63 Reunion. Who are you, exactly? What are you after? My name is Weiss, a professor at Hogwarts. I can help you, having experienced the betrayal of a former friend and the torture of Azkaban. Sirius wasn't about to trust a stranger, even if this stranger had just given him a hearty meal. He looked at Weiss, but didn't respond immediately. Silence seemed the best answer at the moment. He tried to extract more information from Weiss's words, But the information he had wasn't enough for him to easily judge. He fixed Weiss with a wary gaze once again. "Oh, relax. You have nothing now, what can I possibly want from you?" Weiss, noticing Sirius's wariness, tried to allay his concerns with a light-hearted and humorous tone. "But I'm not helping you for nothing. How about a deal? What do you want?" Sirius wasn't sure what he could possibly want from a professor. The Black family documents and materials. Weiss stated his goal directly. He wanted to obtain the knowledge accumulated by the Black family over centuries. "I've been expelled from the Black family," Sirius said lightly. "You are the only male in the Black family. You are the legal heir of the Black family." Really, Sirius had no feelings for the Black family, and was not interested in what Weiss said. "As long as you can help me catch Pettigrew, I will give you everything." "Okay, then sign this contract," Weiss said, taking out the parchment and quill that he had prepared long ago from his pocket, and handed them to Sirius. "It looks like you are well prepared." Sirius took the parchment, carefully browsed the contract and found no hidden clauses and traps, and then signed his name happily. After signing the contract, Weiss said to Sirius, "Let's go, I'll take you to see Dumbledore." "Dumbledore?" Sirius jumped up when he heard the name. Weiss asked in a deliberately suspicious tone, "Don't you believe in Dumbledore?" Sirius waved his hands quickly and said anxiously, "How can I not believe it? Dumbledore is one of the people I respect." "Then what are you hesitating about?" Weiss asked further. Sirius smiled bitterly. "Look at what I look like now, and I'm a wanted criminal." As he spoke, his voice became lower and lower, his shoulders drooped slightly, and the whole person looked a little decadent. "I don't think Dumbledore will care about these. Besides, don't you want to see Lupin and Harry as soon as possible?" Weiss's words were like a fuse, instantly igniting the desire deep in Sirius' heart. Hearing the names of his best friend and Harry, Sirius could no longer suppress his inner excitement, and shouted, "Let's go, let's set off now." After that, he couldn't wait to walk towards Hogwarts. "Wait," Weiss hurriedly stopped him. "Hogwarts is guarded by Dementors, you can't get in like this." When Sirius heard this, he froze in place, as if a basin of cold water was poured over his head, and the enthusiasm that had just been ignited was instantly extinguished. "Besides, this outfit is not suitable for you." Sirius looked down at his homeless appearance, with tattered clothes, greasy long hair and macy beard. At this moment, he seemed to realize his own embarrassment, and couldn't help but lower his head in embarrassment, his fingers unconsciously rubbing the corners of his clothes, looking a little at a loss. The two followed a winding path and came to a clear stream. Weiss took out a set of clean clothes and toiletries from his bag and handed it to Sirius. "I am an adventurer, and I always carry these necessities with me," Wes explained. Sirius jumped into the river without hesitation, and the cool river water instantly refreshed him. He washed his body vigorously, washing away the dirt and fatigue on his body. When he changed into clean clothes, he seemed to have regained his handsome appearance and his youth. The upright posture and deep eyes seemed to bring him back to his glorious days. At that moment, he seemed to have regained his long-lost dignity and self-confidence. "That's much better, don't resist." Before Sirius could fully react, Weiss suddenly cast a transformation spell, and Sirius turned into a black kitten. Meow meow. The black kitten seemed to be complaining about something, and its small body kept twisting, protesting against the sudden change. "Shh, your animagus form is too eye-catching," Weiss said in a soothing tone. "We need to try to avoid unnecessary trouble." Sirius stopped struggling, and when he was about to say something, he suddenly felt a tightness on the back of his neck. He looked up and saw Crookshank's big face facing him. It turned out that he was held in Crookshank's mouth and turned into a helpless little black cat. "Cats are much smarter than dogs," Wes said as he strode forward, while Crookshanks trotted after him, holding the struggling little black cat in his mouth. "Meow meow." The little black cat kept calling, its voice full of dissatisfaction and protest, but neither Wes nor Crookshanks paid any attention to it. Sure enough, the Dementors didn't notice Sirius Black, who had turned into a kitten, at all. They turned a blind eye to the kitten. Wes came to the principal's office with ease. Dumbledore was sitting at his desk handling affairs. Seeing Wes come in, he looked up and his eyes fell on the little black cat in Crookshank's mouth. He was a little curious when Wes had raised such a little black cat. As for Crookshanks, it was already quite famous in the school. Everyone knew it was Hermione's pet. Therefore, it could move freely around the campus without attracting anyone's suspicion or attention. Dumbledore put down his work and asked gently, "Wes, what's going on? You brought a kitten to see me?" His gaze turned to Crookshanks, who gently placed the little black cat on the ground. Sirius cried out in dissatisfaction, but still stood there obediently, waiting for the next arrangement. "Principal, please ask Professor Lupin to come over, I will explain it together." Upon hearing this, Dumbledore glanced at the black kitten and noticed something unusual. Not long after, Professor Lupin came to the principal's office. He had no idea why he was called here. Weiss saw that everyone was there, so he lifted the transfiguration on Sirius. Sirius turned back into human form. Although Sirius's appearance had changed a little after more than 10 years, Lupin still recognized his former friend at a glance. Chapter 64 The Truth Comes to Light. "Sirius! You traitor!" The usually gentle Lupin's eyes blazed red, like a raging beast. He drew his wand and was about to cast the unforgivable curse. Weiss, quick-witted, blasted Lupin's wand away with a disarming charm. Just as the enraged Lupin was about to transform into a werewolf, Dumbledore intervened. "Calm down, Lupin. I think Weiss will give us a reasonable explanation." Dumbledore's words had a lasting effect, and Lupin gradually calmed down. Even so, he kept a close eye on Sirius, fearing he might escape. Weiss recounted the entire story in detail and opened the Marauder's map, where Peter Pettigrew's name was prominently displayed. As one of the map's creators, Lupin knew what this meant. Why is Pettigrew still alive? Why is he at Hogwarts? Sirius stepped forward, staring at Lupin in disbelief. "I can explain everything," he said. He recounted the decision to replace Pettigrew with a secret keeper. At the time, he'd thought it was a brilliant move, but he'd never imagined Pettigrew would betray them and leak information to Voldemort. How could this happen? Lupin couldn't believe his former friend had endured such misunderstanding and pain. "I'm not lying. You can use Veritaserum or examine my memory. I didn't betray James. I'm not a traitor," Sirius said, almost pleadingly, willing to accept any test. He desperately wanted to be trusted. Lupin pressed Sirius's shoulders firmly. "Why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you tell the truth? At that time, James and Lily were dead, Voldemort was missing, Pettigrew was dead, and only I, a self-righteous person, was still alive." Sirius lowered his head, filled with remorse and guilt. He continued, "I went to Azkaban voluntarily. I'm atonement." Sirius' words fell silent. Black, Lupin's voice trembled. He believed Sirius. He had always suspected Sirius of betrayal. Lupin hugged Sirius tightly. Sirius looked up and asked, "Do you believe me?" "Of course." Just as a smile was about to break out on Sirius's face, Lupin's right fist suddenly struck him in the cheek, sending Sirius tumbling to the ground. He struggled to his feet, his face bloodied, and looked at Lupin in agony. "You are the most selfish and stupid person in the world," Lupin growled at Sirius, tears streaming down his face. Sirius smiled, a brilliant smile, even though the blood stain his face made him look a bit creepy. His laughter was filled with relief, as if he had finally found some kind of release. After the nosebleed stopped, the four of them gathered around the desk. 4 pairs of eyes, like 4 piercing rays of light, fixed their gaze on the name of Peter Pettigrew on the Marauder's map. That name captivated their attention, for it held all the answers. Capture this traitor and force the truth of what happened. Lupin's eyes burned with rage. He wanted to capture Pettigrew immediately and make him pay for his crimes. Sirius clenched his fists, suppressing the rage within. Though he appeared calm, the years of injustice and pain he had endured now boiled over into hatred for Pettigrew. Weiss agreed with Lupin. With him and Dumbledore on the case, there was no need to worry about Pettigrew's escape. To avoid further complications, Weiss proposed immediate action. This proposal was unanimously agreed. With the Marauder's map, everything became much simpler. Scabbers, or rather Pettigrew, had been living in constant fear. The news of Sirius's escape had terrified him, and he was constantly gripped by dread. His instincts told him that Sirius was after him. Damn it! Where did I give away my identity? That damned bastard discovered I was still alive. A mouse lurked in the corner of the school, its head darting around, warily observing its surroundings. And that stupid cat. Meow. The cat's cry was like thunder, startling Peter Pettigrew so much he trembled and took off running. Crookshanks purposefully drove Pettigrew in a certain direction. As he fled, he failed to notice the dwindling crowd around him. Too distracted to think, he focused solely on getting rid of the cat. It wasn't until he was driven into a deserted corridor that he realized something was wrong. Just then, a large dog suddenly appeared before him with a woof. Pettigrew stared at the canine and cried out in terror. Sirius, his mind went blank, and he passed out. Weiss's stun spell had struck him with pinpoint accuracy, perfectly timed. Sirius growled softly, ready to pounce and tear Pettigrew to pieces, venting his hatred. Weiss stopped him just in time. If he dies, your guilt will be forever etched in your name. Don't you want to live with Harry? This remark struck a chord with Sirius, instantly calming him down. Weiss placed Pettigrew in the cage he had prepared, and they, the cat, and the dog, returned to the headmaster's office. Anxious, Lupin took the cage and carefully examined the rat within. After a moment, he kept muttering, "It's him. It's him." The marauders were familiar with each other's animagus forms, and the rat also had a missing finger on its right paw, further confirming its identity. Sirius, having also returned to human form, snatched Pettigrew from the cage and roughly threw him to the ground. Pettigrew fell heavily to the ground with a dull thud. He hadn't woken up from the stunning curse cast by Weiss. Lupin pushed Sirius aside and unsheathed his wand. Crucio, he struck the rat on the ground. Honest people can be truly formidable when they get angry. Dumbledore, oblivious to the situation, wiped his glasses. Peter Pettigrew began to twitch incessantly, his body twisting in agony. Lupin wasn't about to let him off easily, so he raised his wand again, ready to attack again. "Enough, Lupin," Dumbledore finally spoke, halting him. "We need him to wake up before we can figure this out." Pettigrew was already squeaking in pain. The Cruciatus curse was too powerful, and he could no longer maintain his animagus form. The palm-sized rat began to swell, quickly transforming into a short, chubby, middle-aged man with thinning hair. His squeaking became a human wail. Chapter 65 I Caught You. Sirius grabbed Pettigrew by the collar and lifted him up. "Long time no see, Peter," every word came out through gritted teeth. Sirius's face had turned a rosy purple, and veins popped out of his forehead. "Sirius?" Pettigrew was incredulous at first. Then he quickly scanned his surroundings, searching for a chance to escape. "Lupin? Dumbledore? Is this the headmaster's office?" Upon realizing where he was, Pettigrew pleaded with Lupin and Dumbledore for help. "Help me. Sirius has gone mad. How dare you?" Sirius hadn't expected Pettigrew to turn the tables. "You betrayed James," Sirius roared, spitting into Pettigrew's face. "You?" The two argued endlessly, their voices echoing through the headmaster's office. Weiss tossed a potion to Lupin, Veritaserum. Lupin pinched Pettigrew's cheek, forced his mouth open, and poured the entire bottle of Veritaserum into his mouth. "What did you give me to drink?" Pettigrew repeatedly scratched at his throat, trying to spit out what he had drunk. Then, his vision began to lose focus, slowly falling into a trance, his body gradually relaxing, and finally collapsing to the ground. "Who is James and Lily's secret keeper?" Lupin eagerly demanded the truth he most desired to know. "It was me." Pettigrew's voice was flat and cold, as if he were recounting a story that had nothing to do with him. Sirius, that egomaniac, thought this was foolproof. Sirius's guilt was palpable, and he once again fell into a deep well of self-blame. Lupin finally felt relieved, and he asked, "Why did you betray us?" "Because I was afraid of Voldemort." Even under the influence of Veritaserum, Pettigrew still didn't dare to address him by name. "He's so terrifying. Why would he give me such a difficult task? I'm just a nobody. How could I possibly defeat the Dark Lord?" "No one asked you to take on Voldemort. I just asked you to keep it a secret." Sirius shook Pettigrew vigorously. Under the effects of the potion, Pettigrew appeared calm. "What if the Death Eaters found me and tortured me? I couldn't bear their torture. So I had to tell the Dark Lord James and Lily's address. This is all Sirius's fault. If he hadn't been so clever, none of this would have happened." Sirius and Lupin couldn't believe their ears. They had never imagined that their companions could be such cowards. Sirius burst into tears. "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, James and Lily wouldn't have died." Lupin watched the scene with mixed emotions. He said to Pettigrew in disappointment, "You coward." After the truth was revealed, although Sirius had successfully proven his innocence, he couldn't be happy. A heavy sense of guilt, like a surging tide, constantly beat against his heart. His self-righteousness, the decision he once considered correct, had now become a pain in his heart that could never be erased. Because of his mistake, he had actually killed his best friend. This pain deeply stung his heart, making it almost impossible for him to breathe. In those dark moments, he even thought about dying to escape the pain and torment in his heart, as if only in this way could he find relief. Lupin stood quietly by, watching Sirius, who was deeply immersed in self-blame. His lips moved slightly, wanting to say something to comfort him, but he didn't know where to start. The words seemed to be stuck in his throat, unable to speak. He could only look at Sirius silently, hoping that he could walk out of this abyss of pain on his own. Suddenly, he thought of something. "Harry," Lupin suddenly spoke, breaking the oppressive silence. "Have you met Harry? He looks like James, a spitting image, except for his eyes. Those eyes are so like lilies." Whenever Lupin mentioned Harry, his affection for him and his deep longing for the past, perhaps also filled with the deepest longing for his lost friend, always etched in his heart. Harry, Harry, Sirius murmured the name over and over. To him, it was more than just a name, it was the only light in a world of endless darkness. As Lupin finished speaking, Sirius's eyes gradually shifted. His once dull pupils glowed with light. The name Harry, to him, was like a ray of sunshine on a winter's day, piercing through the thick clouds and illuminating the long untouched corners of his heart. Indeed, Lupin patted Sirius's shoulder. "You're Harry's godfather. James may be gone, but the responsibility now falls on your shoulders. You must shoulder your fatherly duties." Lupin looked at Sirius's face, haggard with self-blame, and felt a pity in his heart. For Harry's sake, and for the sake of their precious friendship, he knew Sirius would rise again. He was a brave and strong man. If he chose, he would be able to move on from this painful memory and embrace the light once again. "I'm going to find Harry." Sirius leaped up from his seat, eager to leave the headmaster's office. He longed to see Harry so much that every second of waiting was an agony. Lupin rushed forward and grasped his arm. "There are wanted posters everywhere. If you go out like this, you'll definitely be recognized. Not only will you be in danger, but you might also implicate Harry." Lupin's words were not alarmist. Sirius's current situation was indeed very difficult. If you were discovered, the consequences would be dire. "But I can't wait any longer, Lupin." Sirius' voice was pleading. "I must see Harry right away. He is too important to me." "Don't worry, Black. Now that Peter Pettigrew has been caught, your name will be cleared soon," Dumbledore continued. "If you go out like this, it will only scare Harry. What we need is patience and let things develop in the right order." Dumbledore's words were like a magic needle that stabilized the sea. He understood Sirius's inner anxiety very well, but he also knew that a momentary impulse would only bring greater trouble. Chapter 66 Hibernation. Dumbledore finished speaking, flicking his wand. A flash of light appeared in the air, and a chain appeared out of thin air, tightly binding Peter Pettigrew. Mysterious runes gleamed on the chain. Then, Dumbledore pointed to an old cabinet in the corner of the room. The cabinet slowly opened under the influence of magic, and Peter Pettigrew, tightly bound, was stuffed into it. "This cabinet belongs to the previous headmaster," Dumbledore explained. "It was used to punish naughty students. Once locked in there, there's no way you can escape." Dumbledore's assurance reassured everyone present. With his magic, as long as Pettigrew is trapped in this cabinet, he would be unable to escape. "I will contact Fudge immediately to explain the situation, but as you know, the efficiency of the Ministry of Magic." The Ministry of Magic was notorious for its bureaucracy and inefficiency, and not even Dumbledore could change that. "What about Black in the meantime? He can't stay in your office forever, can he?" Lupin asked with concern. He knew his friend Sirius couldn't stay there forever, as it would cause unnecessary trouble. He hoped to find a safer place for Sirius to hide until everything was properly arranged. Dumbledore's gaze darted from the crowd, finally resting on Weiss, a meaningful glint in his eyes. "I have an idea." Weiss frowned slightly, a sense of unease rising in his heart. What evil plan is this old man up to? Then, the two of them, the cat and the dog, left the headmaster's office together. "What's going on? Why don't you say you've adopted a pet?" Weiss was dissatisfied with the plan, but he had no better choice. Lupin replied seriously, "Everyone knows I'm broke. How could I possibly afford such a large dog?" His expression was serious, but his words were tinged with a hint of light-hearted teasing. He gently patted Sirius's transformed dog on the head and said with a smile, "Black Tiger, just stay by your master's side." Sirius was clearly unhappy with the name. He pushed Lupin's hand away and snorted in dissatisfaction, protesting the rather unfashionable name. "Ha ha ha," Lupin laughed, waving goodbye to Weiss and the others. "I have a class to teach, so I won't bother you anymore." With that, he turned and left, leaving Weiss and the dog like Sirius looking at each other in a state of awkwardness. Weiss sighed helplessly, Who made me covet the Black family's wealth of knowledge? He then led Black Tiger and Crookshanks down the Hogwarts corridors, their strange combination immediately attracting the attention of the surrounding students. Just then, Hermione ran over, panting and looking anxious. "Crookshanks," she cried. "Where have you been? I've been looking for you forever." Crookshanks heard Hermione's voice and leaped into her arms, nearly catching him. The chubby ginger cat kept rubbing against Hermione, meowing softly, as if apologizing, or even acting coquettishly, making Hermione giggle. Suddenly, Ron came running over angrily, shouting, "Stupid cat! What did you do to Scabbers?" Crookshanks seemed to understand Ron's words and raised his head in a haughty manner, looking as if he was dismissive. This made Ron even angrier, his face flushing red with anger. Not wanting to argue with Ron anymore, Hermione hugged Crookshanks and prepared to leave. But Ron refused to give in. He followed them closely, scolding Crookshanks and demanding that he hand over Scabbers. The scene drew laughter from the surrounding students, while Wes and Sirius were completely ignored, reduced to mere background. Wes shrugged. "Your good friend went home," referring to Crookshanks following Hermione's recent departure. Sirius rolled his eyes at him. Professor Erwin," Harry Potter panted, running over. "Excuse me, have you seen Hermione and Ron?" Harry hadn't finished his words when a large black dog pounced on him, its head rubbing against him. Harry crept back in fear when he saw it was a massive black dog. Sirius, seeing Harry's reaction, whimpered, feeling bad for being misunderstood. Wes quickly stepped forward and helped Harry up. "Are you afraid of dogs?" Harry shook his head, but he kept his distance, not daring to approach Sirius. "Professor Trelawney predicted in prophecy class that a black dog would bring me bad luck, even death." Sirius barked twice at this, expressing his displeasure with Professor Trelawney and even feeling the urge to bite her. "Professor Trelawney," Weiss nodded. He knew that Professor Trelawney was a witch with the blood of a prophet, but her predictions were often dismissed as nonsense. "Don't worry about it," Weiss reassured Harry. "The black tiger is very well behaved." "The black tiger, that black dog," Weiss patted Sirius' head gently. Sirius circled Harry, his tail wagging like a propeller, hoping to get Harry's attention. Harry cautiously reached out and gently touched Sirius' head. Feeling Harry's palm, Sirius grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. Harry gradually relaxed, even pulling a snack from his pocket and feeding it to Sirius. "Oh no. I still have to go find Hermione and Ron. I hope they don't start a fight." Weiss pointed in the direction Hermione and Ron left. Harry hurriedly thanked him and hurried off. Sirius could only watch Harry's retreating back with longing eyes. "Don't worry, there's still a lot of time, right?" Weiss whispered. In just one day, the news that Weiss had adopted a large black dog spread like wildfire throughout Hogwarts. The students were buzzing about it. After all, Professor Erwin wasn't known for being particularly caring, usually coming across as rigorous and focused on academic research. However, it was just a dog, and in a school full of magic and fantasy, the appearance of a dog didn't seem particularly surprising, so no one delved into it too deeply. The students quickly accepted the new member, though they still occasionally discussed the dog's origins and its relationship to Professor Weiss. Strangely, the large dog, named Black Tiger, wasn't close to Professor Irvine, and seemed to maintain a somewhat distant attitude towards Weiss. Instead, it particularly clung to Harry Potter, always wagging its tail cheerfully and following closely beside him, as if Harry was its entire world. Even when Harry was in class, Black Tiger would quietly wait outside until Harry was finished. At first, Harry wasn't used to having such a large dog around. The sheer size of his presence made him feel a bit uneasy. However, he soon discovered that the large dog was incredibly intelligent and could understand everything he said. Chapter 67, Dementor's Attack. Several times, Harry successfully evaded Filch's capture thanks to the big dog's warnings. Whenever Filch appeared at the end of the corridor, the Black Tiger would sound the alarm, gently nudging Harry's leg with its nose or alerting him with a low bark. One day, Harry and Hermione sat in a corner of the library, discussing the Black Tiger's origins. Hermione stroked Crookshanks in her arms and said thoughtfully, "Perhaps it, like Crookshanks, has the blood of some magical creature. You see, Crookshanks often displays a greater sense of perception than an ordinary cat." Harry didn't care about that. He cherished the big black dog's kindness to him more, which warmed his heart. As they were discussing this, Ron stood up from his seat in a huff and left the library without a word, leaving Harry and Hermione staring at each other. "What's wrong with him?" Hermione frowned, a look of dissatisfaction on her face. Harry sighed and explained, "Scabbers hasn't been seen for days, and Ron's worried about him. He might be too old. It's rare for a mouse to live past its teens." "Crookshanks, you didn't eat Scabbers, did you?" Hermione hurriedly pried open Crookshanks's mouth and examined it carefully, fearing the cat had done something truly unbelievable. "You can't eat mice. They're disgusting." Crookshanks deftly broke free from Hermione's grasp and leaped onto Sirius's back. Then, he meowed repeatedly, as if explaining to Hermione, "I wouldn't eat such a disgusting mouse." Hermione looked at Crookshanks, who seemed to understand. Then she checked the time, stood up, and said, "I have to get to class, Harry. I'll leave Crookshanks in your care." With that, she hurried off, leaving Harry, Sirius, and Crookshanks alone. Hermione had taken every available elective class this year and was busy as a top. If Professor McGonagall hadn't applied for a time-turner from the Ministry for her, she wouldn't have been able to complete all her classes, even if she'd worked herself to the point of vomiting blood. Harry knelt down, gently touched Sirius's protruding ribs, and said with concern, "You're still too thin. You need to eat more." Sirius's dog face broke into a happy smile, nuzzling Harry's hand with its moist nose, its expression of happiness as if it owned the world. Crookshanks turned away with disdain, not bothering to pay attention to the silly dog. "Harry is so kind, just like Lily." In Weiss's office, Sirius gushed endlessly about Harry. Weiss's ears were filled with a constant "Harry this." Time flew by, and soon it was time for the long-awaited Quidditch match. However, as if to create some disruption to the event, a steady drizzle began early in the morning. The rain gradually intensified, the sky darkened, and soon small puddles formed on the ground. The sudden downpour did little to dampen the students' fervor. They had prepared early, carrying colorful umbrellas and donning a variety of raincoats. Filled with excitement, they eagerly arrived at the Quidditch pitch. They found their seats in the stands, excitedly discussing the upcoming match. Today's match was Gryffindor versus Hufflepuff. A clash between these two houses always a highly anticipated event. Both sides displayed massive banners, offering a variety of supportive displays, and some even set off fireworks, which exploded into the sky, forming the images of their respective houses. Even before the match officially began, supporters from both sides were already engaged in a battle in the stands, their cheers rising and falling. Gryffindor's Quidditch captain was Oliver Wood. His love for Quidditch was ingrained in him, and he held his players to extremely high standards, demanding perfection in every move and every tactic, including his own. "We haven't won the cup in 8 years. This year is my last chance," Wood said, his expression grave, as if he were about to enter not just a match but a life-or-death duel. His gaze was fixed on his teammates, especially Harry. "Harry," Captain Wood's voice suddenly rang out, and Harry, having been called out, shuddered, a surge of nervousness welling up within him. "Catch the golden snitch, even if it means death." Wood's aura was so overwhelming that Harry swallowed hard, the pressure doubled, and even his breathing became labored. "Too much," the other teammates grumbled. They felt Captain Wood's demands were a bit too demanding. After all, the game was full of uncertainties, and they couldn't pin all their hopes on one person. Twin brothers Fred and George quickly reassured Harry, "Don't listen to Wood's nonsense. He's just too nervous." Harry finally breathed a sigh of relief, his nervousness slightly eased. Meanwhile, Dumbledore, making a rare appearance at the match, boasted to Weiss, who was sitting nearby, "I was a great player when I was younger. If I hadn't become a teacher, I might have become a professional." It turned out that Dumbledore was also a Quidditch enthusiast, his love for the sport as great as anyone. Weiss, however, had no interest in Quidditch. He thought a rainy day like this was best spent in his office, enjoying a steaming cup of tea in a comfortable chair. If it weren't for Dumbledore's insistence, Weiss would never have been here. He stared helplessly at the field, hoping the match would end quickly. As the match began, the crowd's roar was deafening, echoing throughout Hogwarts. The match was intense, with both teams displaying exceptional skill, and the players galloping through the rain. The Gryffindor players worked in perfect harmony, their teamwork evident in every pass and shot. Not to be outdone, the Hufflepuffs defended with impeccable precision and swift counterattacks, putting immense pressure on the Gryffindor players. The relentless rain didn't dampen the players' spirits. However, the intensifying downpour severely affected their vision. Several car crashes occurred during the match, leaving many worried for the players. Fortunately, no one was injured, and they continued their battle in the rain, their efforts rising to the roar of the crowd. However, no one noticed as the Dementors stationed around Hogwarts began to slowly approach the Quidditch pitch. Their dark figures loomed in the rain, ghostly. Chapter 68 Dumbledore is angry, and the consequences are serious. Weiss had seen this scene in movies, but he hadn't expected the real Dementors to be so much more numerous than the films depicted. The Quidditch pitch seemed like a sweet, tempting cake to the Dementors. They hadn't eaten since leaving Azkaban. The Ministry of Magic strictly forbade them from harming ordinary people, and their daily vigil outside Hogwarts felt like a cat scratch. They craved the good vibes and energy. It was an irresistible temptation. Finally, they couldn't resist. On the field, Harry's eyesight was sharper than Cedric's, and he spotted the golden snitch before him. The tiny golden figure shimmered faintly in the rain, as if beckoning Harry. The snitch soared high into the air, eluding Harry's grasp. Harry pursued it relentlessly, his single mind focused on winning for Gryffindor. He soared through the rain on his broom, further and further away from the Quidditch field. Just as Harry was about to catch the snitch, a Dementor suddenly darted into view. The terrifying figure froze Harry. The Dementor's face was like a skull, its skin grayish-white, clinging tightly to the bones. Its eyes were two hollow holes, gleaming with an eerie blue light. Its mouth was a gaping chasm, lipless, revealing jagged black teeth that emitted a gruesome hiss. Harry's mind went blank. He couldn't understand why a Dementor had appeared there. The Dementor suddenly opened its maw, and a blast of icy air lashed across his face, as if he were in an ice cellar. Horrifying images flooded his mind, and past pain and fear washed over him. His consciousness gradually blurred, and everything in sight became increasingly unclear. Finally, Harry's eyes rolled back, and he fainted, falling off his broom. Merlin's beard. Harry's fallen. Sharp-eyed spectators cried out, their horrified cry echoing through the stands. Some had already spotted the Dementor approaching the pitch. It's the Dementors. The Dementors are coming. With that cry, everyone realized that hundreds of Dementors were floating around the pitch. The terrifying figures swayed in the rain, emitting a terrifying aura, and the entire sky was shrouded in darkness. The audience was in chaos, and people fled in panic. Some students were so frightened that they cried. They hugged each other tightly, their bodies shaking, and the situation was temporarily out of control. In this chaotic moment, Dumbledore reacted quickly. He waved his wand and immediately cast a speed-absorbing charm to slow Harry's descent. Harry's body slowly descended, eventually landing safely on the ground. Just as Harry fell, Cedric grabbed the golden snitch. He held the small golden figure tightly in his hands, but his face was confused. He didn't know what was happening, only that everything around him had become chaotic. Sirius was so frantic when he saw Harry fall that he nearly reverted to human form. Weiss quickly reassured him, Harry will be fine. Dumbledore has already taken action. Sirius managed to maintain his animagus form, but immediately rushed onto the pitch, eager to make sure Harry was safe. Call the Guardians. Dumbledore's voice boomed like a bell, echoing throughout the Quidditch pitch, his hair and beard standing on end. Weiss had never seen him so angry, not even when he learned of Voldemort's return. Dumbledore unleashed his magical power, holding nothing back. A phoenix-shaped Patronus, radiating a silvery, holy light, enveloped the pitch, forming an impenetrable barrier that protected everyone present. Dementors screamed and fled the pitch, sensing the full force of Dumbledore's Patronus charm. However, some were still severely injured by the impact. In an instant, the Dementors scattered, like a flock of startled birds, vanishing into the rain. Despite this, Dumbledore's expression remained grim. They haven't followed their agreement, they've crossed the line. Do you need me to take action? Weiss actually wanted to capture a few Dementors for study. These creatures usually stayed in Azkaban, employed by the Ministry of Magic, making them difficult to capture. This was a rare opportunity. No. We can use this to pressure the Ministry to clear Sirius' name. Dumbledore had a longer-term plan for this incident. Weiss felt a little regretful for having missed such a good opportunity. But he also knew there would be more opportunities in the future. Harry was taken to the school infirmary. He lay quietly on the bed, his face pale. Madame Poppy Pomfrey was examining him thoroughly to ensure he hadn't sustained any more serious injuries. Hufflepuff had won the match, but good boy Cedric felt it was unfair and kept demanding a rematch. He felt it was dishonorable to win the match under such circumstances, and he hoped to face Gryffindor again on fair terms. However, the Dementor invasion dampened everyone's enthusiasm. The match's outcome was disappointing. dampened by the Dementor's presence, and their earlier enthusiasm and anticipation vanished. The next day, news of the Dementor invasion of Hogwarts dominated the front pages of major newspapers. The eye-catching headlines and shocking photos shocked the entire wizarding community. The Ministry of Magic, under the impact of this incident, was also under immense pressure. Letters of complaint and outcry flooded the ministry, nearly overwhelming Fudge's office. Fudge sat in his chair, surveying the mountain of mail, his face sullen and gloomy. The Dementor invasion not only compromised the safety of Hogwarts but also severely damaged the ministry's image. Facing intense public outcry and pressure from public opinion, the ministry was forced to recall the Dementors. These monsters were unwilling to give up. They had originally thought they could enjoy a feast at Hogwarts, but they were met with a powerful counterattack from Dumbledore. They were forced to return to Azkaban to recuperate and await their next opportunity. Fudge sat in a chair, holding Dumbledore's handwritten letter. The contents of the letter troubled him. It's not so easy to overturn a case from over a decade ago. If Sirius is truly proven innocent, wouldn't that prove the Ministry of Magic is incompetent? The more Fudge thought about it, the more frustrated he became. He had never imagined that he, the Minister of Magic of Great Britain, would be controlled by others. He didn't want to admit the Ministry's mistakes, but he also worried that Dumbledore would use this incident to oust him. At least, he couldn't antagonize Dumbledore right now. So, Fudge began writing back to Dumbledore, trying to find a compromise. He hoped to gradually resolve Sirius's wrongful conviction without damaging the ministry's reputation. On the other side, Weiss put down the book in his hand. After a long period of hard work, he finally mastered all the books that Dumbledore gave him. Preview: a new world is about to appear, so stay tuned. I have been asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Meeting at the Three Broomsticks. He rubbed his swollen temples. Sirius, standing beside him, asked in confusion, "Why are you working so hard?" Dumbledore said you're almost stronger than him. The mysteries of magic are beyond your idiotic mind. Sirius ignored Weiss's taunting. His thoughts were now completely focused on the upcoming Christmas, contemplating what gift to get Harry. Harry, however, had taken a long time to recover from being knocked unconscious by a Dementor. After being released from the hospital, he had been frightened by a Dementor disguised as one by Draco and his friends. This had made Harry determined to learn spells to fight Dementors. He knew that Dumbledore and Weiss knew spells to fight Dementors. However, Dumbledore was too busy, and Harry couldn't find a suitable opportunity to ask for advice. Weiss wasn't his acquaintance, but to overcome his fear, Harry mustered his courage and approached Weiss's office. Knock, knock, Professor Irving, are you there? Harry stood outside the door, feeling a little uneasy. At the sound of Harry's voice, Sirius swallowed his food in 2 gulps and quickly transformed into a large black dog. Come in, the door's unlocked. After receiving permission, Harry pushed open the office door. The moment he opened it, he saw Sirius rushing towards him. Hey, Black Tiger, Harry petted Sirius affectionately. Look what I brought you. Harry pulled a piece of steak wrapped in oil paper from his bag. The steak for lunch today is delicious. I think you'll love it. Sirius wagged his tail excitedly at the aroma of the steak. Even though he had only eaten 1 piece, he finished the steak Harry brought in just 2 or 3 bites. Harry stroked Sirius's tail and cautiously asked Weiss, Professor Irving, can you tell me what spell you used to drive away the Dementors? You mean the Patronus? Harry repeated the alluring name excitedly. Is that the spell you and the headmaster used? His mind involuntarily flashed back to the spectacular scene of Headmaster Dumbledore casting the Patronus on the Quidditch pitch. The powerful magic captivated him. However, Weiss's next words dashed Harry's anticipation. Learning the Patronus is difficult. It requires a long time and a lot of practice. Harry's anticipation gave way to disappointment, and he buried his head in silence. He had expected to learn this powerful spell easily, but he hadn't expected it to be so difficult. Sirius, seeing Harry's disappointment, barked anxiously. He circled around Harry, seemingly defending Harry, yet also urging Weiss to find a way to help Harry. Weiss gently kicked Sirius, signaling him to calm down. I really don't have time, Weiss said. pointing to the pile of books on the table. "But you can go find Professor Lupin. From what I hear, Professor Lupin is also very good at the Patronus charm." Weiss's words made Harry's expression turn from worry to joy. He looked up at Weiss hopefully. "Professor Lupin? Does he really know the Patronus charm?" Weiss nodded. "Yes, Professor Lupin is very good at it. And he has a lot of experience and can teach you how to perform it correctly, but Professor Lupin doesn't seem to be well." Lupin was Harry's favorite professor this semester. He remembered Professor Lupin's pale face and frail body. "Don't worry, I think he'll be happy to teach you," Weiss's words reassured Harry. Although he still felt a little uneasy, he happily went to find Lupin. Sirius followed happily behind Harry. He was a little full from eating and just wanted to go out and exercise. Soon, the long-awaited Christmas arrived again. Weiss had planned to study the voodoo he'd obtained from Blackbeard in his office, but Dumbledore dragged him to Hogsmeade without further ado. With the Dementors recalled by the Ministry of Magic, Hogsmeade had returned to its former bustle. The streets were bustling with activity, filled with laughter and joy. People's faces beamed with festive cheer, as if the terrifying Dementor invasion had never occurred. Shop windows were adorned with twinkling lights, and the Christmas tree was festooned with ornaments. Everything seemed so warm and harmonious. Dumbledore took Weiss to the Three Broomsticks, where the rich taste and unique aroma of butterbeer were still fresh in Weiss's memory. "Long time no see, Madame Rosmerta," Dumbledore greeted with a smile. Madame Rosmerta greeted Dumbledore warmly with a kiss on the cheek. "Dumbledore, long time no see," she said, warmly greeting Dumbledore, as if meeting an old friend. Turning to see Wes, she was a little uncertain. "Are you that brilliant Ravenclaw student?" Madame Rosmerta studied Wes closely. Over the years, his demeanor had changed considerably. He was no longer the naive student he once was. "Hello, Madame Rosmerta. I've missed your butterbeer since graduation." Though it was just a polite remark, Madame Rosmerta was delighted. Dumbledore led Wes to a private room and said, "Fudge will be here soon." "Oh, what a day it is today," Madame Rosmerta exclaimed dramatically. "The greatest white wizard and the Minister of Magic are meeting in my little shop. Perhaps they're discussing how to rule the British wizarding world." Dumbledore winked playfully, and Madame Rosmerta burst into laughter. She knew he was joking, but it also lightened the mood. Whatever Dumbledore and Fudge were discussing had nothing to do with her, a small tavern owner. Madame Rosmerta smiled and left the room, leaving Dumbledore and Wes alone to wait. Soon, Fudge and his assistant, Umbridge, arrived. Fudge began complaining as soon as he entered. "You've caused me so much trouble. The Dementors brought this upon himself," Dumbledore retorted mercilessly. "Sirius's false accusation is a grave mistake by the Ministry of Magic." Fudge was surprised by Dumbledore's disrespect, and his expression darkened. Dumbledore, enraged by the Dementors' invasion of the Quidditch pitch, had become less cordial with Fudge, leaving him feeling somewhat embarrassed. It was Umbridge who, after Dumbledore's intervention, eased Fudge's embarrassment. With a flattering smile on her face, Umbridge tried to ease the tension and keep the conversation going. She whispered, "Professor Dumbledore, we understand your concerns very well, and Minister Fudge takes this matter very seriously. We are willing to listen to your suggestions and will act swiftly." Umbridge's words gave Fudge a moment to breathe, and Dumbledore softened his tone. Weiss remained silent throughout the entire process, watching Dumbledore and Fudge engage in heated arguments and bargaining. He was like a bystander, calmly observing a fascinating chess game. The debate between Dumbledore and Fudge dragged on for a while, but eventually, they reached a consensus. The Ministry of Magic would lift the arrest warrant for Sirius, but only after Peter Pettigrew had been tried could Sirius be officially cleared of any charges. On the surface, everyone was satisfied. Chapter 70 1926, Egypt. Weiss simply had no interest in dealing with the Ministry of Magic. After Fudge and Umbridge left, Weiss's face was filled with dissatisfaction. "Don't ever come to me with this kind of thing again. It's a complete waste of time." Dumbledore didn't immediately respond to Weiss's complaint, but slowly placed the Egyptian Book of the Dead on the table. The appearance of the book captured Weiss's attention. "You gave me Voldemort's Horcrux earlier. We are on the same side now. I think you've mastered ancient Egyptian." Dumbledore stroked his long beard and said, "You should be able to understand the book now." Weiss nodded. Although there were some unfamiliar characters in the book that he couldn't understand at first, he was able to guess the meaning through his guesswork. Weiss carefully tucked the Egyptian Book of the Dead into his arms and hurriedly said goodbye to Dumbledore. Dumbledore, still leisurely enjoying his wine, watched Weiss leave, as if foreseeing his future research achievements. Weiss was a gifted scholar. Given enough time and resources, he would surely achieve remarkable results. After Sirius's arrest warrant was revoked, everyone assumed he had been recaptured by the Ministry, and no one paid any attention to the matter. However, Sirius could no longer contain his desire to be reunited with Harry. Initially shocked and incredulous, Harry finally threw himself into Sirius' arms, with Dumbledore and Lupin testifying on his behalf. The two embraced tightly, laughing and crying, a scene that moved everyone to tears. However, Sirius's convictions had not yet been fully cleared, so he could not regain custody of Harry, a disappointment to both of them. This year was Harry's happiest. Not only did he master the advanced magic of the Patronus charm, but he also gained a loving godfather. Professor Lupin became Uncle Lupin. With a firebolt's help, Harry even won the House Cup, feeling his life had come full circle. After the final exams, Weiss had planned to return to the Black family home with Sirius, but a sudden change of heart changed his mind. Cairo, Egypt, 1926. The city's numerous mosques, with their towering minarets and distinctive styles, have earned it the nickname the City of 1,000 Minarets. The Muhammad Ali Mosque atop the Saladin Citadel is even more magnificent. The city's architecture blends ancient traditions with modern elements, creating a unique landscape. Inside the National Library of Egypt, Weiss consulted a woman with a strikingly British and Arabic flair. Her name was Evelyn, a senior researcher at the library, fluent in ancient Egyptian. Ms. Evelyn, thank you so much for your guidance. Your ancient Egyptian is truly remarkable. Weiss's sincere and enthusiastic praise brought a smile to Evelyn's face. I didn't expect Mr. Erwin, so young, to be so interested in ancient Egyptian. Evelyn looked at Wes with admiration. Miss Evelyn is young too, isn't she? I came to Egypt from England because of my father's fascination with Egyptian history, Evelyn rambled on, then suddenly realized she'd said too much and apologized to Wes. Wes smiled and shook his head, saying it was okay. As the sun was about to set and the sky darkened, Wes politely excused himself. Evelyn felt a little disappointed that Wes hadn't invited her to dinner. Wes strolled through the streets of early 20th century Cairo, silently pondering, I can't quite remember the plot of the first Mummy film. But as long as I follow Evelyn, I'm sure I'll find the Golden Book of the Sun and the Black Book of the Dead. Indeed, Wes had now arrived in a new world, The Mummy. It was a very old film, so old that Wes had forgotten most of the plot. All he remembered was that the female lead worked in a library. Fortunately, there weren't many libraries in Cairo in the early 20th century, and this was the only one with a beautiful administrator. Initially, Wes simply wanted to keep an eye on Evelyn, but unexpectedly discovered that she possessed a profound knowledge of ancient Egyptian. When Evelyn saw Wes reading a book on ancient Egyptian, she approached him and corrected many of his grammatical and pronunciation errors. So, Wes hired her as his private tutor. Librarian salaries weren't high, and the library wasn't popular, so Evelyn was delighted to have this part-time job. If there were a rating system, Evelyn's ancient Egyptian would have been expert level, while Wes's was only just beginning. A few days later, on his way to the library, Wes encountered Evelyn, who was rushing around, accompanied by a languid man. An idea struck Wes. The plot begins. He took the initiative to greet them. Evelyn, Wes. After a few days of spending time together, the two had become familiar with each other, no longer as polite as they had been at first. Seeing his sister so familiar with a handsome young man, Jonathan thought they were dating, and his mouth curled up involuntarily. Evelyn knew Jonathan's assumption was wrong from one look at him. She rolled her eyes at him. This is Wes, the ancient Egyptian enthusiast. Then she introduced him. Wes, this is my brother Jonathan. The two shook hands in a friendly manner. Are you really not dating? Jonathan still felt a little regretful. Evelyn is very good, Jonathan. Evelyn's face flushed and she interrupted him hurriedly. Well, what a shame. Jonathan shrugged helplessly. Evelyn, where are you going? Wes asked with feigned curiosity. I was planning to go to the library with you. I have some questions I want to ask you. We found it, Evelyn spoke frankly, recounting the discovery of the map to Hamunaptra that had been accidentally burned by the curator. Wes immediately flashed with interest. Can you take me along on such an interesting adventure? No, Jonathan immediately refused. He pulled Evelyn aside and whispered, the fewer people involved, the better. That way we can share more of the treasure. I'm not interested in treasure, Wes said, leaving Evelyn a little embarrassed. Jonathan, however, simply didn't believe Wes. In his view, no one could resist the allure of money. You guys must need money to go to Hamunaptra, right? Do you have enough money? Wes's question left Jonathan and Evelyn apprehensive. Evelyn was a library employee, earning barely enough to live on. Jonathan was a freelancer with exceptional thieving skills, operating in a shady area. How could he possibly have any spare cash? Weiss saw the awkwardness between the two and offered, I can sponsor this expedition. I'm just interested in the history and culture of ancient Egypt and won't interfere with your actions. Evelyn hesitated and turned to look at Jonathan, hoping to get his consent. Chapter 71 Departure. Wes slowly reached into his chest and pulled out a small, exquisite pouch. He pinched a corner of the pouch and gave it a gentle shake. The next second, a crisp, jingling sound emanated from the pouch, a remarkably clear and melodious sound. Jonathan, always proud of his keen hearing, pricked up his ears almost instantly. He recognized a distinct sound of gold coins clashing against each other, and his eyes lit up. Wes casually tossed the pouch to Jonathan, who hurriedly reached out and carefully caught it. When he eagerly opened the pouch, the glittering glint of dozens of gold coins nearly made him dizzy. He stared blankly at the handful in his hands. My sincerity, Wes said calmly. Searching for the legendary Hamunaptra is no easy task. It requires a lot of preparation. These are my investment. Jonathan clutched the pouch tightly, still hesitant. His eyes moved between the gold coins and Wes, his thoughts spinning like windmills. The amount of these gold coins is considerable, and even after purchasing equipment, there will still be a large amount left. Even if he didn't find the treasure of Hamna Tower, with these gold coins, he would be able to squander it for a while. But if the treasure is found, if Weiss doesn't take most of the treasure as agreed, the loss will be too great. Jonathan was caught in an inner struggle. On the one hand, the gold coin in front of him was undoubtedly a huge sum of money. On the other hand, he was unwilling to give up the potential huge wealth. There was a tangled look on his face, his brows furrowed slightly, and there were two villains in his heart constantly arguing. I think you can see, Jonathan, that I'm not short of money, and I'm not interested in money. Although Weiss's words may sound pretentious, they are actually the truth. After hearing this, Evelyn and Jonathan were so angry that they gritted their teeth and looked like they wanted to hit someone. I secretly muttered in my heart, this guy deserves a beating so much, but I'm so envious. If we reach Hamunaptra, I'll only take 2 items, and the rest of the treasure will be yours, Wes said again, making his promise. Is everything you say true? Jonathan asked, a little skeptical. Absolutely. Upon hearing this, Jonathan immediately grabbed Wes's hand, as if afraid he'd change his mind. Evelyn, watching from the side, breathed a sigh of relief. She knew Jonathan's personality. He'd always become extremely sensitive when it came to treasure. Then, the three of them set off for the prison. Along the way, Jonathan kept introducing the man they were looking for to Wes and Evelyn. That guy's a deserter, caught and imprisoned here. The prison was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of mold and rust. Using money to pave the way, Jonathan soon met the protagonist, O'Connor. 2 guards roughly restrained him and forcibly led him out, forcing O'Connor to his knees. He looked haggard, his hair disheveled, his face covered in dirt, and his body still covered in open wounds. O'Connor recognized Jonathan instantly. He glared at him and shouted, "You thief!" Evelyn quickly produced a black box and placed it before O'Connor. The box looked ancient and mysterious. Where did you get this? O'Connor immediately recognized it as the mysterious box he had brought from Hamunaptra. I brought this from Hamunaptra. Evelyn's eyes lit up, and she squatted down excitedly to meet O'Connor's gaze. Have you been to Hamunaptra? Is Hamunaptra really there? Of course. Tell me how to get to Hamunaptra, Evelyn demanded again eagerly. Come closer, O'Connor said mysteriously. Expecting O'Connor to reveal his secret, Evelyn approached the fence without hesitation, only to be met with a kiss from O'Connor. The nearby guard, enraged, struck O'Connor hard on the back with a stick, followed by a barrage of punches and kicks. O'Connor was dragged away like a dead dog, screaming, "Get me out if you want to get to Hamunaptra. I'm going to be executed soon. You'll never find Hamunaptra after I die." Evelyn, startled by the sudden kiss, froze in her spot, her face flushed, unable to recover. Jonathan, reacting quickly, pulled Evelyn up and went to the warden. Finally, they paid 10 gold coins to free O'Connor. You better know where Hamunaptra is, or I'll make you pay. Jonathan counted the remaining coins with a wry heart. He'd already spent 10 gold coins before even setting off, and his heart ached. O'Connor breathed in the fresh air. Though free, he still reeked of stench, making anyone afraid to approach him. "Give me some money," O'Connor said bluntly to Jonathan. Jonathan clutched his pockets tightly and asked warily, "What are you doing?" "Buying weapons and equipment," O'Connor said, spreading his hands. "You don't want to go to Hamunaptra unarmed, do you?" Jonathan, worried about O'Connor, went along with him to buy equipment. Evelyn stared blankly at O'Connor, unsure what she was thinking. Wes took her back to the hotel, and a few hours later, O'Connor and Jonathan returned with bags galore. Bang! O'Connor slammed a package onto the table. He opened it, revealing a vast assortment of firearms. Long and short, various types of ammunition, even a few bundles of explosives. "Oh my God," Evelyn exclaimed. "Did you empty the arsenal?" Hoo-hoo. Jonathan slumped down in his seat, breathless, exhausted from the shopping spree. "Ask him." Evelyn turned her gaze to O'Connor, who had already cut his long hair and cleaned himself up. He wore simple overalls and a white shirt, showcasing his muscular physique to perfection. He looked quite charming. O'Connor was loading his guns when he felt Evelyn's gaze and looked up at her. "Hamunaptra isn't a safe place. There's a formidable group of guards there." Evelyn shyly looked away, but her understanding of O'Connor's professionalism deepened. Wes was also studying O'Connor, sensing a subtle power within him. "It's not magic. What kind of power is this?" Wes wondered. O'Connor looked at Wes. "Who are you?" "An ancient Egyptian history enthusiast," Wes simply stated, without further explanation. O'Connor took in Wes's slight figure. "You're too weak. The desert will kill you." In his eyes, Wes looked like a helpless rich kid. "I can protect myself," Wes replied calmly. "Really?" "As you wish." Chapter 72 Entering Hamunaptra. The next day, everyone, filled with their own thoughts and expectations, boarded a magnificent cruise ship. The ship was not only luxurious in appearance but also in its interior, with every detail betraying its exceptional status. With ample funds, Wes and his 4 companions were accommodated in luxurious staterooms. Each room, equipped with its own private bathroom and toilet, was spacious, bright, elegantly decorated, and exceptionally comfortable. While boarding the ship, O'Connor unexpectedly ran into his former comrade, Benny. Their relationship was clearly strained, even tense. Past conflicts were instantly ignited, and they engaged in a heated argument. He was hired by a group of Americans. "I'm going to gather some information," O'Connor declared, turning without hesitation and sprinting towards the deck. Jonathan grumbled, "Who knows if he's really gathering information or just out for a drink?" He hurriedly followed O'Connor to the deck. Wes and Evelyn opted to stay in their respective rooms. Seated on their balconies, they gazed out at the distant seascape, feeling the cool, soothing breeze. The cruise ship glided swiftly across the azure sea, its massive hull like a moving steel fortress, slicing through the calm surface, leaving a trail of whitewash in its wake. Seagulls circled the sky, their cheerful cries adding a touch of life and energy to the journey. Night soon fell, a vast, black curtain silently enveloping the sky. The sea seemed remarkably tranquil in the night, broken only by the occasional rumble of waves. The lights of the cruise ship gradually brightened. Late in the night, several small boats, like ghosts, approached the ship in the darkness. A group of mysterious individuals, clad in black robes and wrapped tightly in blankets, quietly climbed aboard. Their movements were silent, like ghosts in the night, unnoticed by anyone. "Here they come," Wes said, sensing the strangers boarding. He didn't intend to immediately eliminate these men. Instead, he wanted to see what the mysterious power within O'Connor truly was. However, Evelyn's safety was imperative. So, Wes cast armor on her and then concealed himself with a disillusionment charm. This way, even if attacked, Evelyn would be somewhat protected. These mysterious individuals were well-trained, their skills far surpassing those of ordinary humans. They were clearly elite warriors who had undergone years of rigorous training, each displaying exceptional agility. Crucially, Wes sensed the same power within them as within O'Connor, though much weaker. These mysterious individuals were none other than the Magad warriors, the guardians of Hamunaptra. For 3,000 years, they had silently protected Hamunaptra from discovery. Is that power a blessing from the Egyptian gods? Wes wondered to himself. But why does O'Connor possess that power? Is he also a Magad warrior? As he pondered this, O'Connor spotted the invading Magad warriors, and a fierce gunfight ensued. Dual rifles in hand, O'Connor instantly transformed into a fearless warrior. Each pull of the trigger dispatched Magid warrior after Magid warrior with unwavering precision, showing no mercy. Wes keenly noticed that during the battle, a mysterious power within O'Connor began to activate. His movements became more agile, becoming one with his weapons. Each shot seemed precisely calculated, with virtually no wasted bullets. Several times, just as a Magid warrior's bullet was about to strike O'Connor, something would deflect it. Perhaps a flying vase, or a bystander caught in the act. Wes observed all of this, observing seemingly random events as if some unimaginable force was manipulating them. As the Magid warriors perished, their mysterious power transferred to O'Connor, inflicting even greater courage. Wes noticed that with each Magid warrior's fall, O'Connor's strength seemed to grow. This power, like an invisible shield, not only protected O'Connor but also granted him extraordinary combat prowess. Wes realized O'Connor's identity was not simple. At this moment, the Magid warriors set fire to the ship. The fire spread rapidly, devouring everything like a ferocious beast. The raging flames illuminated the dark night sky, crackling with a cacophony of sounds. Many people burned alive, their screams echoing in the night air, blood-curdling. Those who were wiser had already abandoned ship, for they were now close to land. Eventually, the cruise ship was completely engulfed in flames and sank. After O'Connor brought Evelyn and Jonathan to safety, he looked around. "Wes? Where's Wes?" he called out anxiously, wondering if Wes had escaped the fire. "I'm here." Wes stood unharmed on the shore, unharmed, not even his clothes wet, as if nothing had happened to him. "How did you do that?" Evelyn looked at him curiously, innocently not thinking much. However, O'Connor and Jonathan were wary. "Who the hell are you?" O'Connor's hand touched the revolver at his waist. His instincts told him that Wes was no ordinary man. Instead of answering directly, Wes changed the subject. "The Americans are getting ready to leave," a voice, untimely, sneered from afar. "Eat shit, O'Connor," Benny jeered. "I'm always one step ahead of you, damn it. We need to hurry." O'Connor slung his load onto his back and felt the weight. "We need to buy some camels." They arrived at a nearby market. In a corner, they found a camel seller. After some bargaining, they bought 6 camels, 2 of which were specifically designed for carrying loads. These camels were tall and sturdy, looking well suited for long journeys. They quickly caught up with the Americans ahead of them. They had organized a group of dozens of men, apparently planning a major attack at Hamunata. They were well equipped and clearly well prepared. After several days of crossing the desert, they finally reached an open area in the early morning hours. There was nothing here except some rubble. Silence reigned, save for the gentle sound of the wind. "We're here." O'Connor patted the camels' faces and prepared food and water for them. "Eat plenty, you'll have to work hard later." Jonathan looked around, finding nothing but flat terrain. "Maybe you've come to the wrong place?" "This place is empty," O'Connor smiled, ignoring Jonathan's question. "It's not time yet. You'll know when it does." O'Connor continued to play it safe. His mysterious tone only irritated Jonathan, but it also piqued Evelyn's curiosity. The sky gradually brightened. As the sun rose over the horizon, the first rays of light shone across the desert, and an ancient city loomed. It seemed as if it had emerged from a dream, looming in the morning light like a mirage. "What is this?" Evelyn covered her mouth, staring in disbelief at the suddenly appearing ancient city before her, as if she had been transported to another time and place. "Stop talking nonsense and charge." O'Connor jumped onto his camel. "If we miss the deadline, we won't be able to enter Hamunaptrata." As he spoke, he whipped the camel, and it began to run towards Hamunaptrata with all its might. Wes and the others quickly mounted their horses and followed closely behind. Dozens of camels began to gallop simultaneously, raising a cloud of dust. Wes used magic to speed up the 6 camels, and they were the first to rush into Hamunaptrata. "Benny, you're late," O'Connor taunted Benny, who had arrived. Benny had no choice but to take the Americans to find another place to set up camp. They came for the money and did not want to clash with Wes and his men. Chapter 73, Golden Sutra of the Sun. "Just now I thought a fight was about to break out," Evelyn whispered to the other 3, watching the American pass by. "We're all after money. There's no need to fight before we find the treasure." Jonathan looked experienced, having seen this sort of situation before. "There's no need to kill each other before we find the treasure. After we find the treasure, we must be careful. The Americans don't mind a little robbery. After all, they're outnumbered. We must remain vigilant and not let them succeed." Jonathan knew all too well that greed, when faced with profit, could drive people to madness. O'Connor was heavily armed. He expertly organized the weapons and handed a pistol to Wes, Evelyn, and Jonathan. Evelyn wanted to refuse, but O'Connor pressed the gun into her hand. "Trust me, you'll need it. In a place like this, weapons are essential for protection." Evelyn finally took the pistol. Although she wasn't skilled with weapons, she understood that it could save her life in a crucial moment. Wes didn't reach for the pistol, simply waving his hand to indicate he didn't need it. Upon entering Hamunaptra, Wes sensed a power enveloping the place, a power not unlike that wielded by the warriors of Mekhed. This power seemed to merge with the land, permeating the entire ancient city and inspiring awe. This place is protected by the Egyptian gods, so why did tomb robbers gain access so easily? Do the Egyptian gods still watch over this land? Do they? Wes felt that everything here was filled with uncertainty, as if some supernatural force was protecting this ancient city. Meanwhile, O'Connor led the group to the spot where he had been attacked by Sand's face. It had become a pit, its edges littered with broken stones. "Did you really see Sand's face?" Jonathan still didn't believe O'Connor, believing he had been dazzled. He fiddled with the stones at the edge of the pit, looking at O'Connor with suspicion. O'Connor also recalled the scene with some doubt. "I'm not sure, maybe I'm seeing things. This is a statue of Anubis, the god of death," Evelyn exclaimed, excited as if she had discovered a new world, carefully touching the surface with her fingers. "The legendary Golden Book of the Sun is buried here. How much is it worth?" Jonathan's eyes lit up. Money was all he cared about, and the value of an artifact lay in how much it could fetch. He stared at the fragments of the statue in Evelyn's hand, seemingly already plotting how to cash them in. "If we find it, we'll be rich." Jonathan's expression was filled with excitement, his eyes gazing upon a mountain of gold and jewels. "It's priceless." Evelyn's tone was filled with the awe of a scholar. "It's not just a relic, it's a witness to human history, so what are we waiting for?" "I can't wait." Jonathan tied a rope to the rock and prepared to descend, impatience evident, not wanting to lose a moment. The Golden Book of the Sun was Wes's goal, and he wasn't about to let it go. They soon reached the depths of the underground palace, where they encountered the Americans and nearly engaged in a brawl. Fortunately, the sharp-eyed Evelyn discerned that this wasn't the chamber they were seeking. Led by her, they evaded the Americans and reached the chamber beneath the Grim Reaper's feet. Pointing to a spot above the chamber, Evelyn confidently declared, "This is where the golden scripture of the sun is buried." Upon seeing the location, Wes abandoned his disguise and immediately cast a powerful spell. With a resounding bang, the earth above exploded, and a coffin dropped. Wes brushed the dust off the coffin, and Evelyn, O'Connor, and Jonathan were all stunned by his maneuver. "This isn't the golden scripture of the sun, this is the high priest's coffin. The golden scripture isn't buried within the Grim Reaper statue, but within the statue of the sun god." Upon arriving at this point, Wes immediately recalled the incident and rushed out of the tunnel without waiting for the other three to react. "Did you see that?" He just pointed his finger and the soil above exploded. Jonathan's speech became stammering, and his expression looked very unnatural. "How is this possible? Who is he?" "Maybe it's been too long, and this oil here is a little loose." Evelyn tried to give a reasonable explanation, but she herself didn't believe what she said. How could it be such a coincidence? Sure enough, this guy is not simple. He should know something. O'Connor stared at the place where Wes left. He was no longer just suspicious of Wes's identity, but was very sure that there was something very wrong with this person. Wes quickly found the statue of the sun god. He turned a blind eye to the mountains of gold around him. After a careful search, he indeed found the golden scripture of the sun. Just as its name suggests, the golden scripture of the sun is dazzling gold all over. Wes stroked this precious ancient book with his hand. It was not made of ordinary paper, but made of various rare materials. It recorded a lot of precious knowledge in ancient magic. Wes suddenly felt a little uncomfortable, and vaguely felt that someone was watching him. Wes immediately took a step back. He had already grasped the magic wand in his hand. He looked around carefully again, but did not find anyone. Only the statue of the sun god Ra stood there quietly. Is it the sun god? Wes gazed at the statue, finding nothing unusual, but he trusted his instincts. He suspected the Egyptian gods still watched over this land, but for various reasons they couldn't directly interfere in the affairs of ordinary people. Otherwise, Egypt wouldn't have become a British colony. After figuring this out, Wes put the golden book of the sun away and bowed to the statue of the sun god, saying, "Thank you for your gift." Then he turned and left the underground palace. When Wes returned to the surface, it was already night. Several bonfires had lit above ground, dispelling the darkness. "Wes, you're finally back." Before Wes could reply, Jonathan, sitting by the bonfire, began to complain loudly again, sighing intermittently. "We dug up a coffin and found nothing. We've lost a lot this time." He lamented his bad luck and continued, "We've put in so much effort, and we've gained nothing." Chapter 74, Revealing Your Identity. Evelyn was explaining the mummification process to O'Connor. She gestured as she explained, trying to help O'Connor better understand the complex technique. Seeing Wes approach, O'Connor immediately shielded Evelyn behind him. "Who are you?" Jonathan stopped complaining and stood shoulder to shoulder with O'Connor, pistol still tightly in his hand. "How disheartening. I paid the gold coins to save you." Wes felt his own sacrifice was unworthy, and at the same time, he was reminding O'Connor that he was not an enemy. "You have a clear goal. You already knew about Hamunaptra's existence, and even knew that it contained what you seek." O'Connor laid it all out. "If you don't reveal your true identity and purpose, I think it's time for us to part ways. We don't need you as an unstable factor in our team." O'Connor's stance was firm. Just as Wes was about to speak, the rapid clatter of horses' hooves echoed. Dozens of black-clad knights formed a line and charged towards them. These were the warriors of Mechad, mounted on mighty war horses, sweeping forward like a surging black torrent, determined to utterly annihilate the intruders. Clad in black robes, they wielded scimitars, their blades gleaming coldly and razor-sharply in the moonlight, ready to reap the dead. Armed with muskets, the warriors awaited the command to unleash a furious blaze, ripping the outsiders to shreds. For a moment, the roar of galloping horses and the rising dust of dust resembled a mighty storm, while the roars of the Mechad warriors echoed across Hamunaptra. O'Connor and his men were no match for them. The Americans were equally well equipped, and a fierce battle ensued across the desert landscape of Hamunaptra. Bullets whistled through the air like meteors, clashing with the shrill whistles of swords. Jonathan, O'Connor, and the others, drawing on years of combat experience, quickly sought cover and launched a fierce counterattack. Under the moonlight, bullets and scimitars wove in a web of death, each side fighting tooth and nail, determined to defeat the other. Wes stood silently by, watching idly. He refused to attack these Mechadian warriors, blessed by the Egyptian gods, because he knew the mission and faith they carried. Facing the fierce resistance of the Americans and O'Connor, the Mechadian warriors suffered heavy losses. War horses neighed, the warriors' bodies were covered with wounds, and their blood-stained vast swathes of the desert red. At the moment of the stalemate, the Mechadian leader, Amir, stepped forward and roared, "Invaders, you have trespassed into forbidden territory and disturbed the dead. You have one day to evacuate Hamunaptra, or you will be cursed by the evil spirits." Amir's voice echoed through the night sky. With these words, he led the remaining warriors away, their figures gradually disappearing into the desert, leaving only a dead silence. "Is what he said true? Is there really a curse?" a few Americans asked worriedly, but the majority ignored Amir's warning. "Whatever he does, these people have been targeting us from the beginning. They might just be bandits from somewhere looking to rob us." Everyone began cleaning up the battlefield and burying the dead in the sand. The desert's daytime temperatures were scorching, like a giant furnace. It wouldn't be long before the bodies dried up, mummified. There was no need to worry about the stench spreading. After clearing the battlefield, they gathered around the campfire again. Jonathan magically produced a bottle of wine from nowhere. He eagerly gulped it down, his cheeks quickly flushing like a ripe apple. "This is such an exciting day," Evelyn said, her face filled with worry about the curse Amir had mentioned. Could curses really exist? O'Connor, however, thought Amir was just trying to scare them. "How could a curse?" He was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Wes. "It's true. There's indeed a terrible curse on Hamunaptra." The three looked in surprise at the sudden appearance of Wes. "How did you appear so mysteriously?" Jonathan complained, a look of discontent on his face. "You made me spill my wine." O'Connor, in turn, looked serious. "What do you mean?" Wes sat down and told them the story of High Priest Imhotep and Ansuna. The princess cheated on the High Priest. "How exciting!" Jonathan listened with rapt interest, as if he were listening to a fascinating novel, completely ignoring the gravity of Wes's words. Evelyn, immersed in their tragic love story, felt as if she had become a part of it. "How do you know so much?" O'Connor was not interested in the story at all. He was more interested in Wes's background. "So who are you?" Faced with O'Connor's aggressive attitude, Wes decided to stop pretending. He spread his palm, and a blazing flame suddenly appeared from nowhere. The flame was striking against the night sky, imbued with a mysterious power. Oh my God, the three of them stared in astonishment. Wes held out his hand, and flames floated in the air, defying the laws of physics. Jonathan curiously touched it with his finger, only to be burned and withdraw it with a startled ouch. He rubbed his finger, staring at the flame in disbelief. As you can see, I'm a wizard, there must be some trick. Jonathan, unconvinced, began to nervously scan his surroundings, but no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find any tricks or hidden devices. So you're really a wizard? O'Connor preferred to believe Wes was a spy sent by some foreign nation, or a conspirator eyeing the treasure, rather than a true wizard. Wes blew gently on the flame, and it began to freeze rapidly, eventually becoming a frozen ball of icy flame that fell and shattered into pieces. The three of them picked up the fragments and looked at each other, seeing the disbelief in their eyes. You really are a wizard? They reiterated in disbelief. Yes, how did you know about Hamunata? O'Connor pressed. An ancient book, Wes answered briefly. The three asked a lot of questions, and finally had to believe that Wes was indeed a wizard. So the curse those people talked about is real? Evelyn asked worriedly. Wes nodded, his expression serious. Yes, the curse of Hamunaptra is real. Entering the third round of recommendations, thank you brothers for your support. Chapter 75, Black Scripture of the Dead. Pack your things and get out of this place. Jonathan, sober now, paced anxiously, his face a look of fear, deeply uneasy about the curse's threat. O'Connor soothed him, it's late now. Traveling through the desert at night is a sure thing. Evelyn was the one most eager to stay. This is the greatest archaeological discovery of the century. As for the curse, we just have to avoid triggering it. She looked at Wes, hoping for a definitive answer. I don't even know if the curse has been triggered. Wes shook his head. Although in the original storyline, Evelyn recited a spell from the Black Book of the Dead that awakened Imhotep, leading to the subsequent events, everything seemed too coincidental. It seemed as if someone was silently orchestrating all this. Wes wondered if his intervention could change anything. Now is definitely not the right time to leave Hamunaptra. Let's talk tomorrow morning. Early the next morning, Evelyn and Jonathan erupted in a heated argument. Evelyn wanted to continue the excavation, but Jonathan, fearing the curse, insisted on leaving. In the end, Evelyn convinced him, or rather, the treasure within the crypt. We must leave before dark today, Jonathan insisted. No matter how much treasure there is, I need a life to spend it. And we agreed that any treasure we find will belong to me, right? This was precisely why Jonathan stayed. They returned to the inner chamber, where Imhotep's coffin still lay quietly. No wonder his coffin is buried at the feet of the Grim Reaper, Evelyn explained, seeing O'Connor and Jonathan's puzzled expressions. Only unforgivable sinners are buried at the feet of the Grim Reaper's statue after death, having an affair with the princess, murdering the pharaoh, and attempting to break the boundary between the underworld and the human world and resurrect the dead. Each of these is a serious crime, and this high priest deserves it. Evelyn sighed and began to examine the coffin. Upon closer inspection, she discovered a mechanism engraved with a scarab image that matched the mysterious box perfectly. She excitedly took out the mysterious box and placed it on the mechanism. Unsurprisingly, it turned out to be the lock for the scarab mechanism. Then, she gave it a gentle twist. A click echoed, followed by a teeth-grinding sound, and the ancient coffin opened. To Wes's surprise, despite knowing of the curse, neither the cautious O'Connor nor the timid Jonathan tried to stop Evelyn. When the coffin lid fully opened, a humanoid coffin came into view. Evelyn was explaining to O'Connor that the sacred law had been chiseled away, meaning the person within would be cursed for eternity. An anxious Jonathan, unconcerned, snatched the key from Evelyn's hand, inserted it into the lock of the humanoid coffin, and impatiently turned the key, unlocking the inner coffin. Inside was the mummified corpse of Immortan, its owner, its mouth gaping in agony, a testament to the agony it must have endured before its death. Evelyn, with intense curiosity, scrutinized the details closely, not missing a single detail. She discovered clear scratch marks on the inside of the coffin lid, indicating that the individual had been mummified while still alive. Then, from the scarab beetle found within, she learned that the mummy's owner, Imhotep, had been tortured to death by insect bite. Insect bite is the most vicious curse in ancient Egypt, often used against the most heinous sinners. I've never seen any text record of such a punishment, and it's said to bring unimaginable disaster. Evelyn explained her findings vividly. Her mind was momentarily consumed by this astonishing discovery, and she began to speculate on the origins and significance of this cruel punishment. Meanwhile, Jonathan, standing nearby, showed no interest in history. His only concern was the glittering treasures. He scanned the coffin eagerly, searching for any valuable burial objects. There must be something valuable here, right? Jonathan muttered to himself, rummaging through the contents of the coffin, hoping to find some valuable burial objects. However, how could Immortan, a criminal of such heinous crimes, have such valuable burial objects? Unable to find anything, he decided to search for treasure elsewhere. Seemingly oblivious to the curse, his mind fixed solely on finding the precious treasure. Hamunaptra was eerily quiet at night, broken only by the occasional rustle of the wind. Jonathan's mood grew increasingly dejected, and he kept complaining about his bad luck. However, the Americans had made a good find. A smug man, clutching a sacred urn, approached and taunted Jonathan and his companions. "Looks like your luck isn't so good. We've found quite a few good things." Jonathan's frustration deepened. Meanwhile, Wes walked to a corner and chanted the spell, "The Black Book of the Dead will fly." Strangely, after a moment, nothing happened. He then realized that the Black Book of the Dead itself was an ancient magical tome, likely enchanted and unable to be summoned directly. Weiss had no choice but to search for the American who had taken the book. Since he hadn't directly encountered the group since arriving, he didn't know who they were, so he could only observe them from a distance. Unexpectedly, Evelyn, passing by, stumbled upon the American professor desperately trying to open a thick book. The cover was made of a hard, smooth black stone, engraved with strange symbols and patterns. It also had a mechanism similar to the mysterious box. He immediately realized that the American was holding the Black Book of the Dead. A daring idea suddenly struck him. While the American was asleep, he could quietly approach him and seize the book. Under cover of darkness, Evelyn cautiously approached the American. Her heart pounded, and her breathing quickened with anxiety. She gently pulled the Black Book of the Dead from the American's arms. At that moment, she almost held her breath, afraid to wake anyone. "You know what? What you did is called stealing." Just as Evelyn was about to leave, the sleeping O'Connor suddenly spoke. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.